بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا اللهم زدنا علما إنك أنت عليم حكيم اللهم اجعل هذه المحاضرة حجة لنا لا حجة علينا يا رب العالمين أما بعد. Brothers and sisters in Islam, we're going to be talking about a topic of great importance. The topic of the salat, the issue of the salat, and more specifically, the issue of the tashahhud. What is it? How do we, its importance, how are we supposed to do it, so on and so forth. The brother that just gave the talk before, Abu Sajid, he mentioned the importance of the tashahhud, in that it is considered to be the tashahhud al-akhir, the last one. It is considered to be a rukn. In other words, a pillar of the salah. And what's understood by the pillars of the salah is that if it is not present, then the salah is nullified or null and void. And this is something that is important because the companions, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, they spoke about the tashahhud in detail, how it's done. And unfortunately today, one day, to talk about the issues of the salah is not really enough. In fact, we had a conversation a few days ago about the salat. The issues of the salat really should be more than one day, because there are so many issues and we're not going to be able to cover everything. However, we're going to cover some of the issues that perhaps people may be confused about or may not necessarily understand. So, how this is going to be presented is going to be presented from the aspect of how the scholars in the past understood the tashahhud. What did they say about it? And this is important because when it comes to fiqh and al-Islam, it's important that we try, and not just fiqh, but in every aspect of our religion, is that it's important to understand Islam the way the scholars in the past understood Islam. If we try to understand Islam in any other way and make that our origin, then we will have problems. We'll have differences of opinion, so on and so forth. But one of the benefits of looking at these issues and studying them and trying to understand them from the scholars of the past and how they viewed them, it gives you the ability to respect the differences that the scholars have. As the brother mentioned before, you might have one position that says this, and you might have another position that says that. And inshallah ta'ala, we're going to talk about some of those differences. So a person might ask, well, why are we going to talk about some of the differences? The reason why we're going to discuss some of the differences is so that a person, if you see someone doing something contrary to what you know or what you believe to be correct, then you should understand that there are other positions that the scholars in the past took. The reason why we're mentioning the scholars of the past is because this is a principle in Islam. If we don't find the ulama in the past refuting issues, then who are we today to refute issues that the scholars in the past didn't refute? Is that clear? So, brothers and sisters in Islam, our deen is predicated on rules and regulations. There are rules and regulations. If we understand that we take our religion from the understanding of the Salaf, or the scholars in the past, and how they understood ahadith and ayat, who are we today in 2016 to say, brother or sister, this is wrong? But you have Imam Ahmed doing it. Or you have Sufyan al-Thawri doing it. Or you have any one of the scholars of the past doing it. But you today, you say, brother, you're not following the sunnah. Or you're not doing this correct, or you're not doing that correct. So at any event, the first thing that we'll start off with is the statement here, was Shamsuddin ibn Qudama, rahimahullah ta'ala. He was the nephew of the famous Ibn Qudama, who also he authored a book called Al-Muqni'. he authored a book called Al-Muqni'. The purpose of this book, and it kind of ties into what the brothers' class, this book here is the origin of the book Rawd al-Murbi', which he spoke about earlier. In fact, Rawd al-Murbi' is like an explanation of it. So then, in this book here, Al-Muqni', it talks about these different issues in more detail. And the reason why I decided to use that is because the tashahhud is such a small issue in terms of the quantity of information that we need to understand a little more detail about it. If you look at it, for example, in the book that the brother used, maybe 3 sentences, 4 sentences, you're in and out. However, when you go to the more detailed books about this issue, you have the opportunity to look at it in more depth and understand a little bit more about it, more information that perhaps you probably never heard before, or perhaps you heard but you're not certain about. So he starts off by saying, ثُمَّ يَتَشَهَّدُ فَيَقُولُ. So one of the things we're also going to try to cover here is learning how to say the tashahhud properly. As a brother mentioned earlier, the importance of the Al-Fatiha. La shak wa la rayb. Learning how to recite the Al-Fatiha is very important. So much so that if a person doesn't know how to recite it properly, then depending on that person's situation, his salat may not be accepted. Likewise, with the tashahhud. If a person does not know how to recite it properly, then perhaps his salat, depending on that person, may not be accepted. The problem now is we don't hear people recite the tashahhud. Sah? How many people walk around and say, oh, I know he knows how to recite the tashahhud? How many people talk about it? Not many. But you can hear someone recite Al-Fatiha, right or wrong. How many times is brother, let's hear your tashahhud. Or sister, let's hear your tashahhud. At any event, so he starts off by saying, ثُمَّ يَتَشَهَّدُ. The tashahhud فَيَقُولُ. How does it start off? It starts off by saying, التَّحِيَّاتُ. We're going to talk about this later, but it starts off by saying, التَّحِيَّاتُ لِلَّهِ. التَّحِيَّاتُ لِلَّهِ. التَّحِيَّاتُ, they say it can mean the magnificence, or the dominion, or His majesty, belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَالصَّلَوَاتُ, الصَّلَوَاتُ, إخوان وأخوات, is used to refer to the khamsa salawat al-mafruda, the 5 salawat, the 5 prayers. وَالطَّيِّبَاتُ, this is also another part. التحيات لله والصلوات والطيبات السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. That, brothers and sisters in Al-Islam, is the tashahhud al-mukhtar. And what that means is, this is the tashahhud that many of the imams of the past chose to say this is the best one. Because there are many different tashahhuds. So, rather it mentions, alayhi aktharu ahl al-ilm. This tashahhud that was just mentioned, this is the tashahhud of aktharu ahl al-ilm. The majority of the scholars in the past used this particular tashahhud. وَمِنْ أَصْحَابِ النَّبِي صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ وَمَنْ بَعْدَهُ مِنَ التَّابِعِينَ. So, pay attention how they break this down. They said that this is the tashahhud that the majority of the scholars in the past have agreed upon, or said that this is the best one. Then it mentions, and likewise, the majority of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And likewise, the majority of the tabi'een, who were also the students of who? Of the companions. وَحَكَاءَ التِّرْمِذِي, Imam al-Tirmidhi, he says, and from them, and then they get more specific, and from them, from the people of the past, minhum as-Sufyan al-Thawri. Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah ta'ala. And likewise, Ishaq ibn Rahuya, who was also one of the companions of Imam Ahmed. And likewise, Kathir min Ahl Mashriq, some of the scholars of Mashriq, or Mashriq. What will Mashriq be during that time? Syria? Right. So, right now what we understand from this is that the tashahhud that was just mentioned, this is the one that is famous or more widely used by many of the scholars of the past, many of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, many of their students, and from them they mention some of the names of the Salaf that are known to many. Qala Malik, Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, he didn't necessarily take that position. And the reason why I'm saying this and bringing this up is though so that if you hear someone say other than what we mentioned, don't say, brother, this is a bid'ah, or this is against the sunnah, or to the end of it. Rather, all of this is legislated. Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, أفضل التشهد تشهد عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله تعالى عنه. Imam Malik, rahimahullah, he said that the best tashahhud Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that the best tashahhud is the tashahhud of Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So let's think about that for a minute. If a person is listening, I said initially that the other tashahhud was the tashahhud of the companions. Sah wa la? Did anybody hear me say that? And of the students of the companions, and so on and so forth. And majority of the scholars of al-Islam. Right or wrong? Did I say that? Right. Then right after that, I just mentioned that Imam Malik, he said that the best tashahhud is the tashahhud of Umar ibn Khattab. Who was Umar ibn Khattab? Does anyone know? He was just a companion. Did he have status? From the Khulafa al-Rashideen. So then he had great status among the Muslims. So herein lies, and this is very important, this indicates that the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they had a difference of opinion on this issue here. In fact, Umar ibn Khattab was from the great Sahabi, and he chose a different tashahhud. So Imam Malik said, this tashahhud that Umar ibn Khattab used was important to me, and I think that this one is the best. And so it starts off as follows. At-tahiyyatu lillahi, az-zakiyatu lillahi, was-salawatu, at-tayyibatu lillahi, as-salamu alayka, ayyuha an-nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, kasa'irihi. And it continues the rest of the tashahhud. And then he mentions, لِأَنَّ عُمَرَ قَالَهُ عَلَى مِنْبَرٍ. Why did Imam Malik say? And why did Imam Malik say that Umar ibn Khattab's tashahhud was better than anyone else's? Pay attention to this. And this is also a benefit of trying to learn Islam from the understanding of the Salaf. It's very important because they didn't just say things just because it sounds good. They used deductive reasoning and skills to look at situations and say, this sounds the best. He mentions why. He mentions why he said it was the best. So Imam Malik, he said the reason for this is because Umar قاله على منبر بحضرة من الصحابة وغيرهم فلم ينكر. He said that the reason why this tashahhud is better than the other one, to him, Imam Malik, he said because Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he said this on a minbar, and in front of the companions, and none of them said it was wrong. He used this particular tashahhud in front of all of the companions, and none of them said, hey, this is not correct. This is the right way. And so he said, فَكَانَ إِجْمَاعًا. He said, so based on this is a form of scholarly consensus. As the brother mentioned earlier, we would also understand from this that the Prophet ﷺ was not around. The Prophet ﷺ was not around during that time. How do we know that? How do we know that the Prophet ﷺ wasn't around when Umar ibn Khattab, when he said, and this is built on the class that came before this one, or the lecture that came before this one, yes. Huh? Not necessarily. There's another reason. How do we know that the Prophet ﷺ wasn't around during that time? Just listen. How do we know? It was something that he said earlier.
Because the companions said that he didn't say it, and that's not. The companions said that was better.
You're close.
Because in the Prophet, the time of the Prophet they didn't need nobody. The Prophet was there with them.
During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they wouldn't have needed an ijma, because the ijma didn't exist during that time. The Prophet ﷺ, he legislated the rules. So there was no who agrees or disagrees. The Prophet ﷺ said, this is what it is, that's what it was. So then they said that when Umar ibn Khattab, when he said what he said that فَكَانَ إِجْمَاعًا. In other words, this was as if it was an ijma'. Why? Because none of the companions refuted it. And this is a type of ijma' called ijma' sukuti, which means the scholars in the past agree on an issue. Some of them may say something, the rest might be silent. This is also considered dalil in Islam. This is also considered proof in Islam. Right. So now we understand the first one was the position of Imam Ahmed and many of the companions. They had one tashahhud. The second one was the tashahhud of Imam Malik. And he used the tashahhud of who? Umar ibn Khattab. Now we're going to talk about Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala. Well, what did he say? He said, أفضله ما روى ابن Abbas رضي الله تعالى عنه. So to Imam al-Shafi'i, he said the best one was the one that Ibn Abbas said. So the first one, it was we're talking about 3 tashahhuds now. And the reason why we're mentioning this, why? Is so that people can hear the differences and how the ulama in the past differed, but it didn't cause problems. Rather, it was based on ilm. It was based on knowledge. Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, أفضل ما روى ابن Abbas. The best tashahhud to Imam al-Shafi'i was the one from Ibn Abbas. And he said that, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This is because Ibn Abbas said, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يعلمنا التشهد كما يعلمنا السورة من القرآن. This is because Ibn Abbas, he said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would teach us the tashahhud the same way he would teach us a surah from the Quran. So based on that, he said, فَكَانَ يَقُولُ. And so he said the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say, التحيات المباركات الصلوات الطيبات لله السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين, to the end of the tashahhud. So then right now we mentioned 3 different tashahhuds. The first one is considered the tashahhud of Ibn Mas'ud. Make sure you write that down too. The first one that we mentioned, the one that majority of the scholars of Islam, majority of the companions, and the majority of the tabi'i, the ones that they use is considered the tashahhud of Ibn Mas'ud. The second one is the tashahhud of Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. The third one was the tashahhud of Ibn Abbas. So, in general, anything that came after that, and this is something from usul al-fiqh. Anything that comes after that, with regards to the tashahhud and differences of opinion. This book here, basically what it does, it combines the positions of the scholars and mentions the issues. So, if there are only 3 recorded differences, for example, if there are only 3 recorded differences, then it's not permissible for anyone to come with ihdath qawl al-thalith or ihdath qawl al-rabi. For example, it would not be permissible in Islam if we agree that the Salaf, they only agreed on, for example, 3 different ways of saying the tashahhud. Then it would be easy for anyone to say, hey, where did you get that from? Because it is impermissible to introduce something in Islam that the scholars in the past didn't discuss on the issues that would have been discussed. Does that make sense? Or is it confusing? Right now, I'll stop right here and take questions if it's not clear. And if not, fuck it.
Is it like that example? Oh, that's in regards to the fifth. Because I was thinking of another issue. But I was trying to think of the issue in regards to the ru'ya of Allah, the saying of Allah that I go in 2 positions. If that was the case, for example, so no one can actually go in and object and say any kind of other position other than those 2 known opinions.
Sure, Islam. In general, with the ulama in the past, if they have positions on issues that are known, then they will say, on this issue, if you go through the books of the Salaf, the scholars of the past, they'll say, in this particular issue, there are 3 positions. Position A, boom. Who holds the position? What's the dalil for the position? So on and so forth. Then they'll say position number B is like this. Who said it? Who holds the position? And the dalil for it. And then they'll say position number 3 is this. Who said it? So on and so forth. And this is the dalil for it. After those 3, you'll find all of the ulama that come after that, they're going to fall in 1 of 3 categories. This is why. Anytime there's an issue, a person, they need a fatwa from Ahlul Ilm. If a person, for example, a person's a student of knowledge, he'll say to you, brother, in this issue, there are only 3 positions. There are only 3 positions in this issue. This is one position A, this is position B, and this is position C. So whatever scholar you ask on that issue, he's going to give you one of those 3 positions. There's no 4th one to it. Is that clear?
Yeah, it's clear.
This comes from ikhwan wa akhwat. This comes from understanding the deen from the understanding of the Salaf. Once you understand and once you're able to go back and understand, okay, who made these statements and who can you attribute it to, this will give you more firmness in understanding your deen. This will give you the confidence that you need in your religion. Because if not, then you'll say, okay, well, this says this, well, this person said I can't do this, well, this person, you're going to be all over the place. You'll be all over the place. So, essentially, back to the origin here, there are 3 positions that we mentioned here on the tashahhud. Is that clear? Right. The most famous and the most widely known position is the first one, which is the position of Ibn Mas'ud. As is mentioned here, walana, the position that we take. Now, he's talking about here the position of Imam Ahmed and his companions and those people during that time. He said the position that we take, and this is something that's famous because most of the people here know it. It says, وَلَنَا مَا رَوَى عَبْدُ اللَّهِ بْنِ مَسْعُودٍ قَالَ. So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, عَلَمَنِي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ التَّشَهُدَ. He said, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam taught me the tashahhud. And he said, كَفِّي بَيْنَ كَفَّيْهِ. And I have my hands inside of his hands. كَمَا يُعَلِّمَنِي سُورَةً مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. The same way he would teach me a surah from the Quran. And then he said, التحيات لله والصلوات والطيبات السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. And so he mentions after this, it says that فَإِذَا صَلَّى أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيَقُلْ التَّحِيَّاتُ. So then he said that if any of you are to pray, then you are to say the tahiyyat. And then it was mentioned in another report, it says فَإِذَا فَعَلْتُمْ ذَلِكَ. If you are able to do that, فَقَدْ سَلَّمْتُمْ عَلَى كُلِّ عَبْدٍ صَالِحٍ فِي السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. If you are able to say this tashahhud, or once you learn this tashahhud, once you have done that, you have given salams upon every righteous servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have given us salams to every righteous servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that clear so far? Right. Before we continue, are there any questions about that? Right. وبأي تشهد تشهد به مما صح عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم جاز. So then, the ulama al-Islam, the ulama al-Salaf on this particular issue, they said, whatever tashahhud that a person is able to do, and it is authentically reported on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, jaz, is permissible. Does that make sense? Did I lose you? I saw everybody looking over there.
You lost me.
I lost you? Alright, that's fine. Where did I lose you at?
The last point.
Alright. So they mentioned, there's a statement of many of the scholars of the past. They said, we mentioned 3 positions of the tashahhud, 3 different types, right? So then at the end of all of that, they said, whatever tashahhud that has been reported on the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, if a person knows it and he uses it, then it's permissible. In other words, there's nothing wrong with choosing any of the ones or any of the tashahhudat that we mentioned, as long as it is authentically reported from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Is that clear? Right. And the person who actually said that, whichever tashahhud you use is okay. This is also a position of Imam Ahmed rahimahullah ta'ala. And this is also the position of Al-Qadi Iyad Abu Ya'la. Some of these names, you know, who are these people? These are scholars of the past who actually researched and studied these issues in great detail. Okay. With regards to the tashahhud, it is not recommended, as the scholars in the past mentioned, it is not recommended to increase upon that which was already mentioned. In other words, once you learn the tashahhud, you should not increase upon that tashahhud. Rather leave it the way that it is. Rather leave it the way that it is. And this is a position of many of the scholars in the past, and from them Imam al-Nakha'i, wa Sufyan al-Thawri, and other than them on this particular issue here. Right. Are there any questions right now? Right. So, with regards to the tashahhud, I have a question for you all. We also know that there are 2 tashahhuds, right? We have there are 3 tashahhuds? I'm talking about the salah. That was good. There are 2 tashahhuds in the salah. I'm like, well, wait a minute. There are 2 tashahhuds in the salah, right? Tashahhud al-awwal, which is the first one, and then we have tashahhud al-akhir. And as we're going to cover tashahhud al-akhir, there's more information in saying that one than the first one. Right or wrong? Right. What happens if a person enters in the salah and the imam is on the last tashahhud and you're on the first one? In other words, you came and joined the salah at the 3rd rak'ah. You pray 2 rak'ah with him. The imam is doing tashahhud al-akhir. What tashahhud are you doing?
You're actually backing up doing the first one because you missed the first one.
So you missed the first one. The tashahhud, now listen, the tashahhud is this length, for example. The tashahhud al-akhir, with everything else along with it, is longer than that, right or wrong? Do we generally sit longer for the last tashahhud than the second one? Or than the first one? The last tashahhud is a lot longer than the first tashahhud, right or wrong? Okay. So what do? You came into the masjid to pray. You came in the 3rd rak'ah. You're on your first tashahhud, and the imam and everyone else is on their last tashahhud. It's longer. You already finished your tashahhud. What do? You sit there.
Follow the imam.
So how are you? You are following. You're sitting there. You do the longer one. Okay. Does anyone agree with them?
There's 2. One of the hadiths say complete, the other one say, okay. and it
Okay,
doesn't.
say that again.
Two hadiths that come يعني في بعض في salat. One of them say complete. If you miss the salat, then complete.
Complete what?
Complete the salat. Complete what you miss. And the other one say pay. Yani pay what you miss. So if you with this, and if you come and use on the third rak'ah, you simply completing, you're taking that his tashahhud, the last one, as your first.
Okay, we already agreed that you're taking it as your first. But when he's in the last rak'ah, it's longer. So after you finish saying your tashahhud, what do you say?
I mean, in the salah is no position except it's something to say.
So I'm asking, what do you say? What dua? Any dua? That's the question. Are we clear about the question?
Oh, okay, I'm clear.
You don't stay
The second tashahhud al-akhir is longer. The first tashahhud is short. Once you finish, then what do you do?
Start with the long.
Huh?
Start with the long.
You start with the long. Right. Anyone else?
Then you continue with where you
Right. So Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah ta'ala, he was asked this question. Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah ta'ala, was asked this question. So he said, إذا أدرك بعض الصلاة مع الإمام فجلس الإمام آخر صلاته ولم يزد المأموم على التشهد الأول بل يكرره. He said that if a person comes into the salah and the imam is on the last rak'ah or the last tashahhud, it's longer. You, he said, you as the one who came in late, once you finish your tashahhud, you do it again. The same thing again. So once you do tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawatu and you finish, you do it again. Tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawatu wa tayyibatu to the end. And then you keep doing it again. Is that clear?
Why?
Why?
So your first
What's
You're saying that you say the shorter one.
Yes, the shorter one over and over again. Why though?
You balance it out for the long one.
If you pay attention to his class, it would be easy for the... Now, before you ask the question, the brother said, why do you keep saying, oh, why don't you just say the other one? Pay attention. If you sit back and think about the class that came before this one, it's very important that you link them together. Why?
Because that is the position which you should say it's a shadow. The time and the position. Order.
So just
Chronological
catching up.
order.
Pay attention. This is a very good question.
That's
Go
the
ahead.
order.
Ahsan Mumtaz. Because the tashahhud al-akhir, the last one is a pillar. You cannot put one pillar in front of another one.
But you're not on the last one.
Is that the last one?
Listen. Pay attention. The fact that you joined the salat at the third rak'ah and the imam is on the last one. The question I asked was, once you finish your tashahhud al-awwal, the first one, what do you do? So some brothers said, well, you do the second one too. You continue. Right? You know, make send salats upon the Prophet ﷺ and to the end of it. So the reason why you don't do that is because that right there is part of the pillar. It's part of the pillar in Islam.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, not pillar in Islam, pillar of the salah. Yeah, it's part of the pillar, the arcane of the salah. Whereas the first one is not. So, Imam Ahmed said, Nas alayhi Ahmed, من أدرك مع الإمام ركعتين قال يكرر التشهد الأول ولا يصلي على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا يدعو بشيء مما يدعى به في التشهد الأخير لأن ذلك إنما يكون في التشهد الذي يسلم عاقبه وليس هذا كذلك. Imam Ahmed rahimahullah ta'ala. And this shows the fiqh of the ulama. It shows how the Salaf, how they looked at issues, and they were very particular about what they said and how they said it. Imam Ahmed rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, whoever prays the last two raka'at with the imam, and you come in late for the salah. Does anyone know what year Imam Ahmed died? Nah. 274?
242.
242? We're going to save that for last. But he died, he was in the 3rd century. We're going to save that for the questions at the end. So anyway, Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah ta'ala, he was alive over 1,000 years ago. I'll keep it over 1,000. Over 1,000 years ago. So he said about this issue, whoever joins with the imam for the salat and he misses the first two rak'ah, and the Imam is in the last rak'ah, and he's in his tashahhud al-akhir, the last tashahhud, and you're in your first tashahhud. Are we clear on this point? So he said, if this is the case, qala, and he said, yukarriru at-tashahhud al-awwal. Then he repeats the first tashahhud again and again. وَلَا يُصَلَّ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. And he does not send salutations upon the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. وَلَا يَدْعُوا بِشَيْءٍ مِّمَّا. And he said, وَلَا يَدْعُوا بِشَيْءٍ مِّمَّا يُدْعَى بِهِ فِي التَّشَهُّدِ الْأَخِيرِ. And you don't make any of the ad'iyah. You don't say any of the du'as that a person would say during the last tashahhud. And he also said, وَلَيْسَ هَذَا كَذَلِكَ. And he said, this is not the place for that. The reason why it's not the place for that is because it's not from the pillars. Are we clear on that? Yes or no?
Yes.
You sure?
Yes.
So I walk out, brother, that ain't really make sense. Well, don't pull me to the side later and ask me a question. Right now is the time. If it's not clear, ask. Hold on.
Before he mentioned that he says you only say that and you stop with it, you don't add nothing to it. يعني تقريب repeating it is not adding to it. Is that?
Not adding to the statement itself.
We're talking about the statement.
The statement itself. There's no increase in the statement. Okay, sir? When he says increase, add to it, it's yani. Good question. When you increase something in it, what is understood by increasing it? The tashahhud al-akhir is known. In that, it's known that we say the tashahhud, we send salutations upon the Prophet ﷺ, and we make different ad'iyah, different types of dua that's been legislated. When they say add to it, that's what they're talking about. You're not going to add any of that to that tashahhud. Now,
I say yeah now.
You understand?
It's different.
You understand what he's saying, right?
Yeah, I do.
ليس فاتحة يعني آية.
No, it's not the same. It's not the same. But I understand what you're getting at, but it's not the same.
It goes back to the pillar.
Yeah, well, the Al-Fatiha is a pillar in the Salah.
I'm saying, you know, when he comes in, we talk about the top, you know, doing the catching up with the Tasha head, the long one. It's not, you know what I'm saying?
The reason, wait a minute. The reason why it's not the same is because we're talking about places in the Salah. The reason why, like for example, the reason why it's not the same, you can't compare the two, is because with the tashahhud, the first tashahhud, and the Imam is in the last tashahhud, you're adding something to it in a place that it shouldn't be. That's it. Whereas with the Al-Fatiha, you're just reciting the Quran at that in its proper place. Right. So if that's clear, then we'll move on to the next part. ثُمَّ يَقُولُ. So once we understand the tashahhud, how much time I got left? Right. ثُمَّ يَقُولُ. Then after that, then we send salutations upon the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim innaka Hamidun Majid wa barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim innaka Hamidun Majid. طيب. Likewise with this is simple, but there are also variances. There are different ways of saying it. As it mentions here, وَإِنْ شَاءَ قَالَ كَمَا صَلَيْتَ عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَآلِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ. You can say that. Or you can say كَمَا بَرَكْتَ عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَآلِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ. يعني إذا جلس في آخر صلاته تشهد بالتشهد الأول الذي ذكرناه ثم يصلي على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كما ذكرناه. Is that when a person is doing the tashahhud al-akhir, the last tashahhud, you mentioned the tashahhud that we mentioned, and you can add after that salutations upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that dua. And there are different variances once again, but a person can decide to choose whichever one he or she is comfortable with. Imam Ibn Rahuya, or they call him Ishaq, he said, لو أن رجلا ترك الصلاة على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في التشهد بطلت صلاته. Imam Ishaq ibn Rahul, he said that if a person were to leave off a salat ala nabi, if a person were to leave off the prayers for the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said that then this person's salat would be null and void. Batalat salatu. That his salat would be null and void. Now, this is not an ijma. Some of the scholars differ, but the question is, who would want to put themselves in that position where there's a possibility that his or her salat will not be accepted? Huh? And like the brother mentioned, the Sheikh Saeed, he said, some of the ulama would tell us, specifically Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Subayl, hafidhahullah, he would always say, khuruju min al-khilaf awla. Staying away from differences of opinion is better. Staying away from the differences of opinion is better than to mix yourself up with differences of opinion. طيب. The last part here, and it's only a couple more minutes, but the last part is Amr bil isti'adha, aqibat tashahhud min ghayri fasl. Once a person does the tashahhud, then he sends salah upon the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Then after that, we have to make isti'adha. Does anyone know what the isti'adha here is? What is isti'adha? Are any of you guys familiar with this term? Ahsant. So the Prophet ﷺ, he commanded us, تَشَهَدَ أَحْدُكُمْ فَلْيَسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ أَرْبَعٍ. The Prophet ﷺ, he said when you finish doing the tashahhud, then you seek refuge from 4 things. This hadith was reported by Imam Muslim. And he says, أَمْرَ بِالْإِسْتِعَاذَةِ عَقِيبَ التَّشَهُّدِ مِنْ غَيْرِ فَصْلٍ لِأَنَّ الْوُجُوبَ مِنَ الشَّرْعِ. They said that this is wajib from the Sharia to do these things. وَلَمْ يَرِدْ بِهِ. Some of them say it was wajib, but some of them, they said no, they don't know. He says, وَلَنَا. He said, as for us, and when they say us here, they're talking about the people who are the companions of Imam Ahmed here. He said, as for us, مَا رَوَى كَعْبْ ibn Ujra. There's a report from Ka'b ibn Ujra. He said, قال إن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم خرج علينا فقلنا يا رسول الله قد علمنا كيف نصلي عليك فكيف نصلي عليك. He said, علمنا. He said, O Messenger of Allah, teach us how to send salutations upon you. Teach us how to do this. فكيف نصلي. And then how do we do it? So the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, قال قولوا اللهم صل على محمد. He says, say, oh Allah, salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim innaka Hamidun Majid wa barak ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim innaka Hamidun Majid. And then he went back to this part of saying the salah from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Does anyone understand this so far? Any confusion?
I have a question.
Tfadal.
Just going back to doing the first tashahhud in the third rak'ah.
In the what now?
In the last rak'ah.
Yeah.
You said repeat it over and over. Every time you repeat it, do you raise your finger?
You know, we were talking about that before the class. The issue of raising your finger or not. Save that for the end.
That question answered then?
Yeah. It's going in there. Say that because I don't want to get off. We still have some stuff here to cover, inshallah. Just don't forget. طيب. It says, وَإِذَا صَلَّى أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيَبْدَأْ بِالتَّحْمِيدِ. So قال سمع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رجلا يدعو في صلاته ولم يحمد الله. The Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, he heard a man praying in the salat, and he said that this person did not praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَمْ يُصَلِّ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ. And he didn't send salutations upon him or the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عجل هذا. In other words, he has to do that again, he has to fix that. ثُمَّ دَعَاهُ فَقَالَ لَهُ أَوْ لِغَيْرِهِ إِذَا صَلَّى أَحَدُكُمْ. So the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, if any of you are to pray, فَلْيَبْدَأْ بِتَحْمِيدِ رَبَّهُ وَالثَّنَاءِ عَلَيْهِ. You start by praising your Lord and magnifying him. ثُمَّ يُصَلِّ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ. And you send salutations upon his Prophet. ثُمَّ يَدْعُو بَعْدَ بِمَا شَاءَ. And then after that, you pray with whatever dua you want to pray with. This issue here of the dua in the salah after the tashahhud, after salah upon the Prophet ﷺ, and after seeking refuge from the four things. Are you allowed to make any dua you want after that? Yes or no? You are. What do you guys think about that?
Repeat that again.
Alright. Right now, we're in tashahhud al-akhir. You make the tashahhud, you make salah upon the Prophet ﷺ, you seek refuge from the four, then the Prophet ﷺ, he said after that, yad'u bima sha'a. What does that mean? Does anyone know?
Anything you wish.
Huh?
Ask for anything you want.
Anything you want. So what does that mean? Give me an example of some things you can ask for. Or rather, the question should be, are there things you can't ask for? That's a better question. Are there things that you cannot ask for?
Yes.
Who said yes? Right. Yalla.
Haram.
You can't ask for haram. Okay, so you can't ask for something that is haram.
Anything that displeases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Anything that displeases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right. What else? Anything else? Right. You can't ask for that. Alright. This is a good issue, and I think this will be a nice point that we're going to focus on here briefly. First of all, when it comes to the tashahhud, at the end of the salat, it should be silent. Right? It shouldn't be loud so people can hear you. It should be silent. The next issue, and we're going to come back to that point. The next issue is reciting the tashahhud in Arabic. Is this something that we have to do, or can we do it in English?
No, it got to be Arabic.
It has to be Arabic. طيب. ومن قدر على التشهد بالعربية والصلاة على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لم يجوز بغيرها. So the Salaf, the scholars of the past, they mention, whoever is able to recite the tashahhud in Arabic, then it is not permissible for him or her to say anything other than that. And then they go on to mention, it says, فَإِنْ عَجِزًا عَنِ الْعَرَبِيَّةِ, if they are unable to say it in Arabic, تَشَهَّدْ بِلِسَانِهِ كَقَوْلِنَا فِي التَّكْبِيرِ, then he says whatever he can with his tongue. And it says, على قول القاضي أن لا يتشهد وحكمه حكم الأخرس. Some of them say if he can't say the Arabic, then he doesn't say anything. It's almost like a person that's mute. If he can't say the tashahhud in Arabic, then he shouldn't say it. This is a position that some of them had, some of the scholars of the past. However, it says فَإِنْ قَدَّرَ عَلى التَّعَلُّمِ, if a person is able to learn, if a person is able to learn the tashahhud مَا إِمْكَانِهِ, and he has the ability to learn, لَمْ يَصِحْ, then it is not permissible for this person to do it unless it's done in the Arabic language. And it says, فَإِنْ خَافَ فَوَاتَ الْوَقْتِ أَوْ عَجَزَ عَنْ تَعَلُّمِهِ أَتَى بِمَا يُمْكِنُهُ مِنْهُ. However, if the person is afraid that the time for the salat will go out before he learns it, pay attention. If a person is afraid that the time for the salat will go out before he can learn the proper tashahhud, in this case, أَجْزَأَهُ لِلضَّرُورَةِ, that it is permissible for him to do it any way he can based on necessity. Based out of necessity. And brothers and sisters in Islam, this shows the importance of learning the tashahhud. It shows the importance of learning the tashahhud. The issue that we mentioned before about dua. This is the last part. It says, وَإِنْ دَعَى بِمَا وَرَدَ فِي الْأَخْبَارِ فَلَا بَأْسَ الدُّعَاء فِي الصَّلَاةِ بِمَا وَرَدَ بِهِ الْأَخْبَارِ جَائِزٌ. Any type of dua that has been legislated from the Prophet ﷺ is permissible to do in your salah. قال أثرم قلت لأبي عبد الله. Abi Abdullah or Abu Abdullah is Imam Ahmed. It was said to him, إِنَّ هَؤُلَاءِ يَقُولُونَ لَا يَدْعُوا فِي الْمَكْتُوبَةِ إِلَّا بِمَا فِي الْقُرْآنِ. He said that There are people, those people, they say we can't make any dua in the salah unless we find it in the Quran. This is what Athram, he said to Imam Ahmed. He said that they told us that we can't do anything, we can't make any dua in the salah unless it's found in the Quran. So he said, فَنَفَضَ يَدَهُ كَالْمُقْدَى, and he moves with his arm and shows that he was upset. قَالَ مَنْ يَقِفُ عَلَى هَذَا. He said, which one of you came across this dalil? Who said that? What evidence do they have to say that? And he said, وَقَدْ تَوَاتَرَتِ الْأَحَادِيثِ قَدْ تَوَاتَرَ الْأَحَادِيثِ عَنْ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ بِخِلَافِ مَا قَالُوا. He said, it is clear that we have an abundance of ahadith that says the exact opposite of what you just said. The ahadith that we have, it says the exact opposite of what they said. قلت لأبي عبد الله إذا جلس في الرابعة يدعو بعد التشهد بما شاء. And so then he said, so I said to Abu Abdullah, I said to Imam Ahmed, after I sit for the last tashahud in the salah, يعني يدعو بعد التشهد بما شاء, after the tashahud, can I make any dua that I want? Can I make any dua that I want? قال بما شاء لا أدري. He said, with any dua that you want, I don't know about that. Imam Ahmed said, I don't know about that. I don't know if it's okay for you to make any dua that you want. He said, but what I do know, وَلَكِنْ يَدَّعُ بِمَا يَعْرِفُ. He said, however, what I do know is that you make dua from those narrations that you have. وَبِمَا جَاءَ, and that which came. قُلْتُ عَلَى حَدِيث عَمْرِ بْنِ سَعْدٍ قال سمعت عبد الله يقول إذا جلس أحدكم في صلاته ذكر التشهد ثم يقول. He said, if a person is sitting in the salah after the tashahud, here's a dua that person should say. And then it says, Allahumma inni as'aluka min khayri kulli. It says, oh Allah, this is a hadith that a person should say after they finish the tashahud. Allahumma inni as'aluka min khayri kulli. Oh Allah, I ask you for all of the good. Ma alimtu minhu wa ma lam a'lam. The good that I know and the good that I don't know. وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ شَرِّ كُلِّهِ, and I seek refuge in you from all evil. مَا عَلِمْتُ مِنْهُ وَمَا لَمْ أَعْلَمْ, the evil that I know and the evil that I don't know. And then he said, اللهم إني أسألك من خير ما سألك عبادك الصالحين. And he said, oh Allah, I ask you for all of the good that the righteous people make dua for. He said, oh Allah, I ask you for all the good that all the righteous people make dua for. And he said, وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا عَادَ مِنْهُ عِبَادُكَ الصَّالِحُونَ. And I seek refuge from every evil that all the righteous people seek refuge from. It says, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً. Oh Allah, give us good in this world. وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً. And in the next life, good. وَقِينَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. And protect us from the fire. رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لَنَا ذُنُوبَنَا. Oh Allah, forgive us of our sins. وَكَفِّرْ عَنَّا سَيِّئَاتِنَا. And pardon us of our sins. وَتَوَفَّنَا مَعَ الْأَبْرَارِ. And allow us to die among the righteous. And then he says, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا مَا وَعَدْتَنَا عَلَى رُسُلِكَ. He said, give us that which you promised us from your prophet. وَلَا تُخْسِنَا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. And do not make us from the losers on Yawm al-Qiyamah. إِنَّكَ لَا تُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادِ. For indeed, you never betray your promise. This is the dua that Imam Ahmed mentioned that the Salaf would make during that time. وَلَا يُسْتَحَبُّ لِلْإِمَامِ زِيَادَةً عَلَى هَذَا. And it said it's not recommended for Imam of the Salat to increase upon that. This is so that he will not cause oppression to the people praying behind them. Whoever is leading the Salat, they have to be mindful of the people that are behind them. However, if he or she, if they're by themselves and they can elongate the Salat as long as they want, so long as it doesn't lead them to a sahwa. And a sahwa in the Salat is when you get to forgetfulness. You might say, man, what rak'ah am I at? Or I'm this, or what's that? So, back to the initial question, because we're running out of time. Back to the initial question about asking for things in the Salah. Does anybody know anything about that? Some of the things you can ask for and some of the things you cannot ask for. Or can you just ask for whatever you want? Huh? Like, many of the scholars in the past, they mentioned that it is impermissible to ask for maladdat ad-dunya. They say that it is impermissible in your salat to ask for specifics in the dunya. But what does that mean? Like what? For example, and you have to listen to the argument because they say فَأَمَّا مَا يَقْصُدُ بِهِ مَلَذَّةَ الدُّنْيَا وَشَهْوَاتِهَا كَقَوْلِهِ اللَّهُمَّ ارْزُقْنِي جَارِيَةً حَسَنًا. For example, if you say, "Oh Allah, give me a beautiful woman," in your salah, give me a beautiful. Obviously, there's some differences of opinion, but just listen to. Or طَعَامًا طَيِّبًا, or bless me with some good, tasty food. Or daran qawra'a, or give me a house that's real big. Wa bustan aniqa, or bless me with a fruitful garden. Wa nahwi. They say that فَلَا يَجُوزُ الدُّعَاءُ بِهِ فِي الصَّلَاةِ. They said it is not permissible to make these types of ad'iyah or dua inside of the salah. Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says something there. He says, يَدُوا بِمَا أَحَبْ. He said, pray and ask for whatever you want. And the proof that he used, he said, لِقَوْلِهِ عَلَيْهِ الصَّلَاةُ وَالسَّلَامُ فِي حَدِيثِ ابْنِ مَسْعُودٍ. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, ثُمَّ لْيَتَخَيَّرْ مِنَ الدُّعَاءِ أَعْجَبَهُ إِلَيْهِ. He said, then a person asks for in the dua, in the salat, whatever he wants. And this hadith was reported by Bukhari and Muslim. And then there's another report that says, ثُمَّ لْيَتَخَيَّرْ بَعْدُ مِنَ الْمَسْأَلَةِ مَا شَاءَ. And then it says you ask for whatever you want in another narration. So then, right now, there's a report from some of the scholars in the past that say you can't ask for whatever you want. We didn't get to their evidence yet. And then we have the ones that say you can ask for whatever you want. And they mention two clear hadith, right or wrong. Did the Prophet ﷺ, didn't we just read a hadith? It said that ask for whatever you want from dua, whatever you want. So, that's one hadith. The other one said, ثُمَّ لِيَتَخَيَّرْ بَعْدُ مِنَ الْمَسْأَلَةِ مَا شَاءَ. And then you ask for whatever you want. So the people that say that you can ask for whatever you want, they have two very clear, sound, authentic hadith. Sah wa la? Tayyib. The other position, they say, وَلَنَا قَوْلُهُ عَلَيْهِ الصَّلَاةُ وَالسَّلَامُ. So they bring another hadith, the opposing this. They say, إِنَّ صَلَاتَنَا هَذِهِ لَا يَصْلَحُ فِيهَا شَيْءٌ مِّن كَلَامِ النَّاسِ إِنَّمَا هِيَ التَّصْبِيحُ وَالتَّكْبِيرُ وَقِرَاءَةُ الْقُرْآنِ. Rawahu Muslim. So then they use another hadith from Imam Muslim. And this hadith says, for indeed our prayer is not upright, is not correct if you have anything from speech of human beings. Anything from speech that happens outside of the salah, inside of the salah. He said, for indeed the salah is for praising Allah, magnifying Allah in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this hadith was reported by Muslim. He says, وَهَذَا مِنْ كَلَامَ آدَمِيِّينَ. He said, when you go and ask for a righteous woman, good food, big house, this is the speech of people. This is not for speech for the salah. And he said, وَلِإِنَّهُ كَلَامَ آدَمِيٌّ يَتَخَاطَبُ بِمِثْلِهِ. These are the type of speech that a person might say to somebody else. Like for example, man, I want a righteous wife. I want some good food. These are the things that people say outside of the salah. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, any speech that people use outside of the salah is not suitable in the salah. So for the position of those who say that you can't ask for these things, it's because this is considered speech that is outside of the salah. And then they give some examples of speech that is considered outside of the salah. If a person comes to you and says, Salaam alaikum, will you say wa alaikum salam while you're praying? No. This is considered speech outside of the salah. It says, if tashmit al-atis, if a person is sneezing, will you say yarhamukallah? No. Because the person is outside. If you're praying, no.
There's a hadith from the guy who came to salah and
he gave an ishara with his hand.
No. He said yarhamukallah. Somebody sneezed in the salah.
And they were all.
And they told him to be quiet.
Yeah. No. They
said we don't do that.
Advise them after. Like this salah is only for.
Ahsant. Yes. That's the hadith.
Oh, okay.
I just mentioned it.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't hear.
Yeah. It says, "Inna salatana hadhihi la yaslahu fiha shay'un min kalam al-nas."
Is that another version of the hadith? Like, that somebody said this hadith to the person in the salah? Or, I'm sorry.
I don't know. What's your question?
Is that the hadith that we're using right now? When he came to the salah, he said, Yarhamukallah? No.
Yes, that's the same hadith.
Okay.
But what maybe do you understand the issue?
I got him confused.
Okay,
I
they're
don't
using.
know which hadith it was. I thought it was a different
Okay,
hadith.
we're using that hadith to show that the impermissible. Understand how they're using it. The Prophet ﷺ, when that hadith was reported, someone walked into the masjid, they sneezed, Yarhamukallah, and they said, when the salat was over, they said, who said that? Hamdini said, for indeed our prayer, we don't have any speech of humans or any kalam in the salat. We don't have any other. So, they're using this hadith here to show the impermissibility for asking for things that people do when they're talking in the salat. You understand? Is that clear, everyone?
No.
Okay. Huh?
That statement is weak.
It's weak to who?
Because you're not
To you?
asking. No, you said in the salat.
In the salat.
The hadith, the Prophet said, ask for anything you want.
Right. So listen how they explain that. They say, وَهَذَا مِنْ كَلَامَ آدَمِيِّينَ لِأَنَّ كَلَامَ آدَمِي يَتَخَاطَبُ بِمِثْلِهِ. And then he says, وَهَذَا, it says, فَأَمَّا الدُّعَاء بِمَا يَتَقَرَّبُ بِهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ مِمَّا لَيْسَ بِمَأْثُورٍ وَلَا يَقْصُدُ بِهِ مَلَاذَةَ الدُّنْيَا. He said, basically, those hadith that you're talking about, ask for whatever you want, they said those hadith are used for asking for anything that's going to get you closer to Allah. That's what that means. They're saying, when you say ask for whatever you want, in other words, ask for whatever you want that's going to help you get closer to your Lord. That's how they explain it. This is the kalam of the Salaf. This is not me. I'm just little Ali. These scholars of the past said that. So then it says, مِمَّا لَيْسَ بِمَعْثُورٍ وَلَا يَقْصِدُ بِهِ مَلَاذَةَ الدُّنْيَا قَالَ جَمَاعَةً مِنْ أَصْحَابِنَا لَا يَجُوزُ. A large group of the Salaf say it's not permissible to make that type of dua in the Salah. I'm not saying this is a scholarly consensus. The point is, Ikhwan, is to let you know the importance of getting close to your Lord inside of your Salah. That's the point. The point is this. At the end of the day, Ikhwan, we're all going to die. Every last one of us. Do we want to be in our... This is something to think about. Do you want to be in your Salah, ask, I just want a righteous wife. I want some good food and a big house.
Stop.
Or do you want to make it like the dua that we just made? Oh Allah, I ask you for everything good that the righteous ask for. And I seek refuge from everything evil that the righteous saw evil from. And everything that's good, I want that. And everything that's evil, I don't want that. And everything good that I know, and even the good that I don't know, I want that. And all the evil that I know and the evil that I don't know, I want to stay away from that. What should we ask for in our salah?
It's a no-brainer.
That's the point. And that's the point when the imams of the past, when they're talking, this is what they're talking about. All they cared about was taqarrub ila Allah. The only thing that concerned them was getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not like us today. We think about money 24/7. Brothers, we think about getting married all the time. We think about getting more money, a big house. This is stuff that we think about in our time period. We're talking about people over 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago. Only thing they talked about was how to get close to their Lord. That was important to them. How can they be better worshipers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? At any event, I'm going to stop with that. I wish I had more time because I wanted to actually go over. I got more time?
Yeah, you got more time.
You wanted, you said it.
So
You wanted more time. You got more time.
Oh, well. Then let's do this thing. I wanted to stop that short anyway. Damn, couldn't get out of there. So look, this is what we're going to do, inshallah ta'ala. I want to listen to people do the tashahhud. Anyone want to try the tashahhud? Whoever thinks they don't know it, you can't pronounce it properly, let's get some reward. Huh? Fadda.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala
The tashahhud, not that part, the first part.
At-tayyatu lillahi
At-tahiyyatu.
at-tahiyyatu
At-tahi, not tayi.
at-tahiyyatu wa
At-tahiyyatu
at-tahiyyatu
lillahi.
lillahi wa salawatu wa tayyibat. Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi
Wa rahmatullahi.
wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi salihin. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh.
Hey, mashallah. Fadda.
I got a question about something else. You offering the salat and you sneeze and you say alhamdulillah. Is it permissible to say alhamdulillah to yourself?
If it's permissible to say Alhamdulillah to yourself in the salah.
If you offering the salah in Jamaat, then you sneeze, is it permissible? Because I've read that before where it's permissible to say Alhamdulillah like to yourself. But the person, people shouldn't respond and say
Allahu A'lam. But if we base it on a statement here that we just covered, the answer would be no, based on one position. And the reason why is because that would be speech that takes place outside of the salah. Now,
I got a question. When he just recited the
tashahhud.
He said that on the part when Assalamu alayka.
طيب. Yeah. Anna.
I didn't know if you was going to touch it.
I wasn't going to. I was going to wait for somebody to do what you just did. So it took what, almost an hour.
I didn't know if you was going to wait for it.
I wasn't going to because here's the thing. As many of the ulama mentioned with regards to that, what is the brother talking about? Does anyone know what he's talking about? Huh? No, what he's talking about in the Arabic language, he says Assalamu alayka. This kaf here lil mukhatab. In other words, it's as if a person is saying that the Prophet ﷺ is present. Right? So how do the ulama deal with that? I wasn't going to touch it until somebody mentioned it, but since he asked the question, then we're going to have to talk about it. The issue goes as follows. The hadith, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when he was living, they said, Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. They said, we give salams to you, the Prophet, so on and so forth, while he was living. When he passed away, some of the Sahaba, they changed it. They said, well, Assalamu ala nabi. Right? However, majority of the ulama, past and present, they still say Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi in this particular issue. The question now would be why? So I've been reading on this issue since, when did we start talking about the show? What year was that? 2010? Maybe? We've been talking about this same issue since about 2010. The same issue right here. So some of the things that I came up with, like Sheikh Salih Fawzan, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, he mentions it. Some of the ulama, they say basically it's from the aspect of ta'zeem. In other words, not ta'zeem in terms of lordship, but in terms of the status of the Prophet ﷺ, in terms of his status. And you'll find the Imams of the past, like Imam Ahmed, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, you don't find any of the Salaf saying that that is incorrect. Because we do understand that they all came after the time of the Prophet ﷺ. However, you also find some of the companions saying something different. So, in saying that, in a nutshell, I do have something here about that. It says, "In yakuna du'a al-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam bis-salamati min makarih wa naqs wal-'aib." Part of making this du'a to the Prophet ﷺ is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected him from any deficiency and so on and so forth. ويحتمل معناه التعويذ بالله والتحسين به فإن السلام اسم له سبحانه وتعالى. Right now it's talking about the salam. The issue of salam is from the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alayk. So here, in essence, what they're saying is, it's a term of endearment to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. If you look at it, it also mentions that when you say Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi or Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi, ma'anna nabi alayhi salatu wasalam tuwfiya. You're saying this salams to the Prophet upon the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and he's not present. It says A, he's not present. So the ulama of Islam, some of them mention, they say here, this is dalil to shows that the scholars of the past, they stick to the text. They say that this here is a clear evidence, more than a lot of evidences that show that the scholars of the past, they stick to the text. The text came from the Prophet ﷺ with this exact narration. Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi. This is the way it came in the narration. And so because of this, this is what the Salaf stuck to, whatever the narration was. Even though we have some of the Salaf actually saying what you said. So, Khalasatul Kalam, in summary, to bring it all together, When you look through the books of the past and different ulama on this particular issue, some of them say you can say it the way you just said it, or you can say it this way right here, because this is the way the text came. And if anyone says anything other than this and say that it's wrong, this is the way the text came. The text came this way, and so the ulama didn't change it and say this is what it is. Allahu A'lam.
I had a question. Somebody asked if you can repeat the tashahhud.
Can he? Yeah, did somebody else want to repeat this tashahhud?
Yeah, I think they wanted you.
Who? Somebody wanted me to repeat this tashahhud?
The viewers online.
Who?
Viewers online.
Oh, viewers online.
Yeah, it's live
I didn't even know people on.
Yeah, it's live stream. It's on YouTube.
You should have told me.
You didn't know you're live.
Right. So the Prophet, the tashahhud goes as follows. At-tahiyyatu. At-tahiyyatu lillahi. Was-salawatu. Wat-tayyibatu. As-salamu alayka. أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. This is the tashahhud. There are many different types that we mentioned. We mentioned 3 types, 3 different ones. However, this is the one that the majority of the companions used, even after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. This is the majority. Pay attention to this. This is something that's also we have to look at. When we first started talking today, I said the importance of following the way of the Salaf, the way that they understood Islam, the way that they looked at these situations. This tashahhud here, and I'm glad the brother asked the question because it ties everything in. When you look at the situation here, the Prophet ﷺ, alamana dinana, he taught us our religion. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Then he taught it to his companions. The Prophet ﷺ's companions were alive when he passed away. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The students of the companions were around, they learned the religion from the companions. The majority of them never changed that. The students of the companions were around. They also knew that the Prophet, and they were the best from among us in Tawheed. La shak wa la rayb. Have no doubt about that. They were the best from among us in understanding the Tawheed. And they also did not raise the Prophet ﷺ above his station. Rather, he is our Prophet, but we don't worship him. We don't worship him. But, having said that, the Prophet ﷺ taught his companions. The companions taught their students taught their students. Imam Ahmed was from the students of the students. Imam Shafi, Imam Malik, none of them said it was a problem saying it this way. However, we do have some of the companions saying something different, like what the brother mentioned. But this is not the majority of the ulama don't say that. Even to the ulama today that's hayyun, today they still say this right here. This is what has been reported. Wallahu a'lam. Any other questions? Naam ya Shaykh.
Said Imam Ahmed died in 242.
241. That was supposed to be towards the end. I told him to wait. I wasn't going to give him the answer.
The 3rd century.
It is the 3rd century. The 3rd century.
That is the 3rd century.
I got 241.
It is. But it's the 3rd century though. Qarn al-Thalith. Now.
One more question. When you was talking, and it's really a 2-part question. When you kept saying the tashahhud. When you say the tashahhud, are you referring to the first and the second part? When you say
so listen, tashahhud al-awwal consists of what was just mentioned. Tashahhud al-akhir consists of what was mentioned and the part of the Prophet ﷺ and the other dua is part of it.
Got you.
Right? That's why it's called tashahhud al-akhir, the last one, because it's more, yeah.
You mentioned regards to dua at the end of the tashahhud al-akhir, that you shouldn't ask something that's related to the dunya.
This is some khilaf between the ulama on it, but some of them mentioned that you shouldn't ask for maladha to dunya, the things that a person will satisfy them in this dunya.
No, but there's some things like a person may use as to get towards the akhirah. For example, he may need some wealth in order to, like whatever it is, like a wife in order to.
So here's a question. Allah, I'm not saying it's wrong. Actually, I'm not telling you it's wrong. I just mentioned the difference there. That's it. And the point of me mentioning that difference, and pay attention. My point of mentioning that difference was to show how the Salaf was, how they concerned themselves with their closeness to their Lord more than anything else. That was it. A person can look at it, and you can look at it for yourself and say, yeah, well, you know, you can come up with reasons. Imam al-Shafi'i said, ask for whatever you want. It's not like, I'm not telling you, brother, you can't do this. No, it's a legitimate khilaf bain ahl al-ilm. La bats. No.
That situation of the first tashahhud, saying it over and over again, is this in the Hanabila, or this is just...
Is that in the Hanabila? What's the Hanabila? Come on, man. We try to stay away from that, man. What's the Hanabila? What's that? Huh?
Is this what Imam Ahmed and his companions?
That was his fatwa, Imam Ahmed's fatwa. He died in the year 241. Yeah, that's close to the Sahaba. Matter of fact, it's funny now, I forgot to mention, is it permissible to even make dua for people by name in their salat when you're making dua for them? That's another issue, right? So, Imam Ahmed, he said to Imam Shafi'i's son, he said, I make dua for all the Muslims and your father. So I make dua for all the Muslims and your father in my salah. Now a person can look at that also and say, well, dang, if that was the position, that's, you know, that's kind of like speech, right? In the salah. So like I said, it's not black and white. I just mentioned that to show the importance of getting closer to your Lord.
Wouldn't the father
you said that.
Wouldn't the father be a non-Muslim?
Imam Shafi'i's son. He said to Imam Ahmed said to Imam Shafi'i's son. He said, I make dua for all the Muslims and your father after he passed.
Now, when we don't be specific on our dua, you know. I don't know if that's etiquette of the dua too. To be general. Like when you ask for khair, you know, you ask for khair in dunya. It's like a general dua, you know, where I'm not gonna ask for a specific, oh Allah, give me these red pair of Nikes. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's like the dua you said, to me it sounded very general. You know what I mean?
I don't understand the question.
Like it's not specific. Like, oh, I need a new iPhone.
What's not specific?
It's like
asking for a righteous wife and good food.
You understand? It's like a general dua that you make.
That's like, permissible. All of it's permissible.
So you're saying that more, but the dua should, preferably what they're saying is it should be a general dua, not specifically like, I need a new car.
Has nothing. It's called maladdatud dunya wa shahwat. And what they're saying is a person should not ask for things that they can, enjoyable things in their dunya, rather in their desires, to fulfill their desires. That was one of the positions.
One of the positions.
Yeah. So we're not trying to be tunnel vision. It was just mentioning the khilafat and the issue.
Getting closer to Allah.
That was it. Now.
Does Bill ask the question about raising the mistletoe?
Raising the, I said say that to the end. We're going to push that way. I'm going to let the sheikh over there handle that. The one that's standing by the door over there. I want the... Like, subhanakallah. Huh?
Last question. The Alhamdulillah part. Isn't that, like, when you say Alhamdulillah, isn't that part of Salah? Alhamdulillah. Is that part of Salah or that's part of speech now? For example, when someone sneezed, the brother asked if Alhamdulillah, if it's, you said it's part of speech, it's going to speak.
Who says Alhamdulillah? You mean in his Salah?
Yeah, like someone's praying and he sneezed.
Right. Pay attention.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we talk about the Salah, right? The Salah, inside of the Salah, there are certain things that are supposed to be said during certain times in certain places. So if you would have said, if you say what he said, at what place does that belong in the Salah? What would it be okay to say that in the Salah? You see what I'm saying? Huh? Of kalam and nas. The speech that's general, it ends once we say Allahu Akbar. So that means whatever comes out of our mouth, even to the point, if a person laughs or makes noise loud enough, distinguishable enough, it will nullify their salah. Because there's no place for that sound in the salah. You see how serious it is? Now,
sujood, is that an opportunity to ask for things?
You can ask for things in the sujood, but any other question, I'll have to pass the mic. This brother's here waiting. It's not fair for me to
take up all the time. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sorry, my brother Naeem, my brother Allah, he apologized. He had an emergency. He's not able to make it here, inshallah ta'ala. So our brother Mufti Muhammad there, inshallah ta'ala, will come on by the permission of Allah. And we thank our brother Ali Davis, alhamdulillah, for being patient with us with our questioning, inshallah. Inshallah ta'ala, the remaining questions after the talk will be, inshallah ta'ala, the quizzes. Don't forget the quiz with the prizes and the closing remarks.
Most of the brothers, they raised their hands to do the talk on fiqh al-nawafil. However, after I made wudu and pondered, I thought it only made sense to do the speech on that which is obligatory and mandatory, instead of that which is voluntary and extra. Even though, inshallah, that will be beneficial as well, but it only makes sense. As is mentioned in some of the hadiths that are narrated from the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet is quoted, have quoted Allah subhanahu the exalted, وَمَا تَقَرَّبَ إِلَيَّ عَبْدِي بِشَيْءٍ أَحَبَّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا افْتَرَضْتُهُ عَلَيْهِ أَوْ كَمَا قِيلَ. A hadith that states that Allah subhanahu the exalted says that my slave will never draw himself nearer to me with a thing more fonder and more beloved to me than that which I have made incumbent upon him. So this hadith is a cornerstone in the concept of crawl before you walk. The wajib before the mustahab. Inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my first volunteer is who? Sharif? Right, bismillah. Also, it's supposed to be a workshop, huh? Inshallah. So let's make it a hands-on workshop. Right. Now Sharif, this is what I want you to do, inshallah. I want you to make the salah facing the people for everybody to see. But I want you to pray based off of that which you must do. Nothing recommended. Nothing recommended. The bare necessities. I want to see how much you and how much we know about the bare necessities of the salah. This is very important because there may be a place or time in which you cannot do the extra things. So you have to know the bare necessities, let alone different with other Muslims, saying what must be done and what has to be done, what is the bid'ah, what is the sunnah, and you don't even know the basics yourself. Everybody understand this? So I want you to make the salah like nothing is recommended. Let's see. Further. Just do it.
Allahu Akbar. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الله أكبر.
What you say?
سبحان ربي العظيم. سمع الله لمن حمده ربنا ولك الحمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم. الله أكبر. رب اغفر لي وارحمني. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم. الله أكبر.
Right. Okay. Jazakallah khair. Don't sit down yet. Now, do it again, but tell us the steps now. First step is what? Takbiratul ihram. Saying it or doing it, or both. Show us.
Allah.
Raising the hands and then saying what?
Allah.
Outside. Okay. Then what's next? Obligatory. You have to do that.
No.
Okay. Fine. That's good. Stick what you know. Very good. And that was how you were taught. That's what the answer you should give. It's very good. Fine. What's next? That's obligatory.
Take the mic. Take the mic.
Fine. Okay. Fine. All right. Yusuf. I'm quite back up for you. That's what you said. Let's see you after the salah with the bare necessities of salah. Nothing that's recommended. Further.
الله أكبر. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وتبارك اسمك وتعالى جدك ولا إله غيرك.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين الله أكبر.
Right. Shukran. Sheikh Habib. Good job, Yusuf. Let's see, Sheikh, if you got something different for us. Prayer like the bare necessities. Nothing recommended.
Allahu Akbar. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وتبارك اسمك وتعالى جدك وإله غيرك.
Right. Okay, Sheikh. Jazakallah khair. Sharif, come back up. Now, everyone pay close attention, please. When we say that an act of the prayer is recommended, it should be done, and we say that it isn't obligatory, that does not mean on any circumstance that we're encouraging you not to do it. And we're saying that it isn't important. We're not calling you not to practice and do all the recommended acts. We're not at all saying that. But right now we're just teaching the basic what? Nitty gritty. The asl. The basic asl of that which you must do in order for your prayer to be valid. And if you don't do that, your prayer is invalid. And everything else is garnish. It's a basic necessity. Everybody understand this? So, start again. One more time. Everybody pay close attention. Tight. Hands do not have to be raised. Does it mean don't raise the hands? We're not saying that. You shouldn't raise your hands? La. But the basic necessity, the hands do not have to be raised. That is not mandatory from the salah. Number 2, keep going. So let's start again now. Allahu Akbar. Saying Allahu Akbar. You definitely have to say that without a doubt. What's next? No. Hands being placed, right hand upon the left hand, regardless where you put it at. On the chest, between the chest and the navel, on top of the navel, beneath of the navel, on top of the chest. Regardless of where you put it, these are both recommended acts of the prayer. Once again, that's how you should pray. That is the way that Muhammad ﷺ prays. However, that is not what? The basic necessity is something that you must do. So he said, Allahu Akbar. He did not raise his hands. He did not put his right hand upon his left hand, let alone on any part of his body or his torso. What's next? La, we got one person. Only one volunteer right now. No, go back and do what you did. You said something else before the Fatiha. Was what? No, you didn't mess it up. You said Subhanallah, right? That also is not mandatory. What's next? Al-Isti'adha. We say that also isn't mandatory. What's next? That also isn't mandatory. Continue praying. You recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Go to the last verse. Right, go to the next position. Right, saying Ameen also is recommended and is not obligatory. It is not mandatory to say Ameen. Right, the next position is the ruku'. Once again, raising the hands, going into the ruku' is not, it's not mandatory. I don't want to go too deep, but even saying Allahu Akbar, going into the ruku' is an issue in itself. And this is very important for us to understand this, is that when you learn the basic simple things of the religion, it goes to show you how easy and how facilitated the deen is. And it's for every single person, despite their level of intelligence and understanding. And you do more, you perform more, you do the recommended acts, that's a beautiful thing. But the deen is simple for every single person. And there's no one that's going to feel burdensome when he's making a salah. I don't know this, I can't say this, I can't remember this. The salah is easy and simple. Everybody understand this? And this also shows us, brothers and sisters, very important, is that there are many things that you do that are not from the way the Prophet ﷺ prayed. Or many things, as we've just seen, that people think are obligatory, and they're not. And that's a mistake. And you have to be purged of those pieces of ignorance that have to be taken out of your system. Thinking that something is wajib that isn't wajib is incorrect. And that's not the proper Islamic tarbiyah, as some people say. Keep them ignorant. Don't tell them that they don't have to do this. Lie. That's like telling your children about a lie. Instead of just children, they're doing a lie. Teach them the truth. Teach the truth. There's nothing to hide. Right, so go into the ruku'. Says Allahu Akbar. Where do your hands go when you make ruku'? Right, what if you didn't put on your knees? On your thighs? Move your hands up. Move your hands up. Move your hands up. Okay. What about if you put your hands on your shins? Huh? Where's your head? How should your head be? Right. Is it obligatory to be straight down? Huh? What you think? Right. Come on, ruku, please. Also, that is not obligatory. Then what you say after that? That is also not obligatory. What's next? What's before sujood? Follow. How do you go down? Hands first or knees first? Hands first or knees first? What's obligatory? Doesn't matter. How do you go down? Hands or knees? As far as obligation. We're not talking about that which is preferable. As far as obligation. What's next? What are you saying you sujood? And where do you put your arms at? Are your arms, you put them out like this? Tuck them to yourself? What do you do? What are you saying you sujood? Also not obligatory. Come out of your sujood. Says, Allahu Akbar. Where do you put your hands at? What if you put them on the ground? Put them on the ground. Or folded them or anything else like this. Placing your hands in that specific position is not what?
Obligatory.
What do you say when you make this? That also isn't obligatory. Go back down to the next sujood. What do you say in the sujood, Sharif? La. What do you say in the sujood? Nothing. Come back out of the sujood. Go back up to the next rak'ah. La. Continue obligatory salat. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim until the end of Surah Al-Fatiha. غَيْرِ مَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِينَ. That's it. Know what I mean? Surah Al-Ikhlas, Surah Al-Falq. That's it. Go back to ruku again. Nobody tell him. One volunteer. One volunteer, not two. Next person that gives the answer is going to be volunteer. Try it. All right, Sharif, Ahsan. Very good. Everybody saw that briefly? Once again, as a disclaimer, we are not saying that that's the best way to pray. We're not saying that. We're not saying that it's recommended to leave off the sunnah of the Prophet and the levels of the sunnah. There's some things that are recommended, some things are what? Highly recommended, borderline obligatory. What? Borderline what?
Obligatory.
I said, good job, Sharif. Yusuf. Based off of what we just showed you, tell us the first recommended act of the prayer.
Recommended?
Yes.
To raise your hands?
To raise the hands. That's the first recommended act of the prayer. How should the hands be raised? The palms face the qibla, like this, spread out, closed, like you're making dua. Like this. Like that. Al-Muhim is what? What we agree upon is what?
They gotta be raised.
The hands should be raised. The hands what?
Should be raised.
That's the first recommended act of the prayer. The hands are what?
Should be raised.
The second recommended act of prayer is what?
Saying
La.
This obligation. Saying
La. Al-Qabd.
Oh,
Qabd.
holding your hand.
Putting the right hand where? On the left. Where? Everyone pay attention. On the palms one way. Grabbing the palm is another way. Grabbing the wrist is another way. Placing it upon one's forearm, not grabbing it, is what?
Another way.
And some other people of knowledge even say to the elbows. All recommended. Where do you put the hands?
That's recommended.
That's recommended. That's what we're doing, the recommended way now.
So on your chest?
Right. Some of the people of knowledge, they say on the chest. Everybody understand this? Some of the people of knowledge, they say on the navel. Some of them, we say people of knowledge now, we didn't say people of innovation. People of knowledge, people of sunnah. On the navel. So be careful. Many people today, they have immature knowledge. They say those who put their hands on their navels are people of innovation. And that's not the sunnah. That's wrong. And if you actually read the books of the Salaf Salih, you will find that most of them are quoted to put their hands on the navel and not the chest. And contrary to popular belief. And read the book of Imam At-Tirmidhi and find out he doesn't even mention putting them on the chest. Not saying that that's not sunnah. Not saying that's not sunnah, but we're trying to prove a point here. We're trying to do what? We're trying to prove a point. Is that we have to purge our minds from these misconceptions. The cup must be what? Emptied. And then you pour it again. Everybody understand this? So, when you put the hands on the chest, don't forget how you hold. How you want to hold your hands down. Okay, they're all optional. Chest. That's also considered chest. On top of the navel, or actually what? Beneath the navel. Everybody understand this? The next recommended act of prayer is what? What dua? What is that called? It's the tawajjuh. Tawajjuh.
To what?
What are the ways that you say that dua? That's the most popular one. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. Also, Allahumma ba'id baini. Asanta. Also. Right, there are more. Good, very good. Next recommended next is what, Yusuf? Pay attention, Sharif. What's next recommended?
To say this surah after
La. La. Al-isti'adha. It's the what? Al-isti'adha. A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan rajim. Sheikh Habib, you next. You're going to do even a higher level than that. After the isti'adha is what? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Then you recite what? That's obligatory. We don't even want to recommend things. A surah after that. Everybody understand this?
How many
Sheikh Habib, pay attention because your level is going to be what? It's going to be even higher. Everybody understand this? A second coating of polish, of gloss. Everybody understand this? Then what's the next recommended act of the prayer?
Raise your hand.
Raise the hands again. Everybody paying attention. Raise the hands what? Again. Then you do what?
Say Allah.
Nah, that's obligatory.
Go through.
Or we'll stick with that for now. You go into what? Ruku. How do you put your head? This is one of the most common mistakes brothers do in the salah. All of the time. What's the position of the head? Down, like this. Relax your neck. Up like this, which most brothers do. Or straight.
Level with the back.
Hey, what's the next recommended act of the prayer? Subhana Rabbil Alim. Pay attention, Sheikh Habib, because you're coming next. Or we'll say how many times? 3 times. Adna al-Kamal. The lowest level of perfection is 3. Then what else? Any other supplications in the report? 5. Then what's next? Rest recommended. And also, raising the hands. Where should the hands be raised to? The earlobes? To one's shoulders? Or as many brothers, they do this all the time? See, this is not reality. Many brothers, they do this. But some brothers, you may come out of recording and do this. Laugh. No, it's very common. It's very common. Everybody understand this? Simplicity. Raising the hands. What's the next recommended act of the prayer?
Put it on your chest.
You put it on your chest or
Put it to your side.
put it to your side. That's a fierce issue of khilaf among the people of knowledge. Even though it wasn't that fierce among the earlier ulama. But the later ulama really fought over that issue. Everybody understand this? Then what do you say? That's recommended after that. Or Ahsan. What's next? That's recommended. How do you go into sujood? Hands first. We say that this is an issue of khilaf among the ulama. What should go first? And Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he said there is no difference of opinion, is that all of them are permissible. And they only وَإِنَّمَا اخْتَلَفُوا فِي الْأَفْضَلِ, and they only differ on that which is best. And Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah of the 8th century, he says there is no khilaf among the people of knowledge that they are both permissible and valid. Whether the hands first or whether the knees first. Everybody understand this? The view of Imam Malik ibn Anas, he says, is that it's optional. But when you read most of what the Salaf al-Salih did, most of them went down on their knees first. And very rarely, or very seldom, will you find an authentic narration that the companions went on their hands first. And this is also, as I said before, they differ over those hadiths. Some hadiths say hands first before the knees. Some hadiths say knees before the hands. Some hadiths say do not pray like a camel prays. How does a camel pray? How does a camel go down? Where are the hands of the camels? These are severe technical issues. And the strongest opinion, and Allah knows best, is that you should go down on your knees first and not the hands. That's the strongest view. And that's the most natural position of the body. Khalas, moving on. What's next that's recommended?
Have your hands by your
To spread your arms out in the sujood. Not like that, but more, huh? A little more. Fingers facing the qibla. Should your feet be together or not? Some of the people now say no. And they say that when Aisha radiallahu anha, when she grabbed the Prophet's feet, they still could have been separated. But that's an issue in itself. Moving on. What do you say in the sujood? Subhana Rabbil A'la. How many times? And then what else do you say? What other supplications could you make in the sujood? Subuhun, Qudusun. Or what else? What else?
Any dua.
Any dua. Asking Allah for anything. In English?
No.
Yes. Speak English in the salah.
Yes. La. La.
Tayyib. Come out. What's next? That's recommended.
have your hands
On between your knees and your thighs. Then what do you say? How many times? Is that authentic, that hadith? But ascent. Okay, then what do? You go back into sujood, the same thing. Now you're standing up, Yusuf, to go to the next rak'ah. What do you do that's recommended?
You could sit, but
Some say sit and some say what?
Go
right. Do you go up on your hands first? Your knees? Do you rely on your legs? Excuse me, huh? Very important issue, Ikhwan. He says the jalsatul istiraha. Is it from the sunnah to sit down briefly? Tawfiq, yes or no?
It is from the sunnah.
Okay. What supplication do you make in that position? When you're sitting, before you go up to ruku, or the next rak'ah, what supplication do you make? In that position? Not in jilsa. You made your two sujood, you're coming up now for a brief pause to the next rak'ah. What supplication do you make? Sheikh Habib, what supplication?
No supplication.
If there's no supplication to make it, how can you say it's an act of sunnah?
You don't make no.
Is there a position in the prayer in which you remain silent?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Where?
That same position.
It's not a position.
And that's a very important point that you mentioned, Imran. It's very important. And that is because when you're different over an issue, it is a capital mistake to bring up another issue in which the people differ, or the same issue itself. In other words, you said A, I said B. To prove that you shouldn't say A and you should say A, I bring C that's controversial itself. As so many people do, that doesn't make any sense. Everybody understand this? That's stupidity. Or some people, they'll bring the actual A-B issue up again. And that's the whole purpose of me and you differing on the issue in which is more than one view. So how are you going to force me to take something over which we're fighting in the beginning? Everybody understand this? And it's a very important concept among the ulama, is that when you're trying to get someone to take a view, then you have to bring something that's clear and strong. Not something that is what? Everybody understand this? Right. So therefore, the concept of jalsatul istiraha, there are different views on it. Is it sunnah? Everyone agrees that the Prophet ﷺ did it. There's no doubt that he did it. Everyone understand what this jalsa is? Yes. I don't think everybody got it. You make sujood, you say Allah Akbar, right? Before you go to the next rak'ah, do you sit down for a second? Or do you go say, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la, Allahu Akbar? That sitting is called the sitting of rest. None of the ulama differ over the fact that the Prophet ﷺ did it. He did it. Without a doubt, he did it. However, why did he do it? That hadith is narrated by a companion whose name is Malik ibn al-Huwaydith, radiallahu anhu, and Sahih Bukhari. And that companion, he went to the Prophet ﷺ in the later years of his life. He was not with the Rasul ﷺ in the early days of the Hijrah, when the Salat was made obligatory, in the early days of Medina. He only went to Medina when the Prophet ﷺ had lived for some time. He had fought several battles. And there's another narration which the Prophet ﷺ says, La tasbiquni. He says, don't move ahead of me. He says, because I become a little heavier. I become what? A little heavier. So some of the ulama, they say that the Prophet only sat there to do what? Rest. To regain his strength before he got up to the next rak'ah. And others, they differ and they say, no, the Prophet said, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. In that hadith, pray like you see me pray. And he didn't make any exclusion to what was out of need and necessity and what was absolute worship. Everybody understand this? So it's two different views, and it's very important to understand this. And from the strongest evidences that those ulama use to say that it isn't sunnah, is there's no dua to make. And there's no place in the prayer in which you're what? Silent. Everybody clear on this? If you were a traveler, and you wanted to make salat al-maghrib, or people that were offering salat al-isha, huh? Everybody understand this? The fourth rak'ah, the imam stands up. Some people, they'll sit and they'll wait for the imam to come down. They say that you should make tasbih and never sit, remain silent in the salat, in any position. Khair, inshallah, moving on. Back up to the next rak'ah, what do you do? How do you get up? Do you get up with your hands first, like this? Palms on the ground? Knees, fist, like you're kneading dough? Or do you get up like this? Everybody understand this? That's another issue in which the people of knowledge, they differ. So now you're in the second rak'ah, Yusuf, quickly. Okay, then what do? You raise your hands again?
No,
you don't. Should you?
No.
Tired. Many brothers, they do that. They come out of the second rak'ah and they raise their hands. The Prophet ﷺ is not reported to raising his hands in that position. That's a common mistake that many brothers, they make. Moving on to the next recommended act of the salat. Follow.
Recite the surah after.
Recite the basmala again. Then, after the Fatiha is another what? Surah. Go into the report now.
What about saying Ameen?
Ameen as well. I said, very good. Then what's next?
Raise your hand saying Allah.
Raising the hands again. Going to the report, the same thing again. Everybody understand this? After you make the tashahhud, what do you do in the tashahhud? Show us what you do in the tashahhud. Let us hear the tashahhud. What's the tashahhud? What's the recommended act of the tashahhud?
التحيات لله والصلوات والطيبات السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين.
Right, now, there's more than one way. There's more than one way of making the tashahhud. We're not going to get into that technical issue. There's more than one way. Do you have to send prayers upon the Prophet ﷺ in the first tashahhud? Only in the last tashahhud. Is sending prayers upon the Prophet ﷺ even obligatory in the salah? That's another issue. Of course it's good, but is it mandatory? Everybody understand this? And the more we study these issues like this, from the biggest benefits of this is that it humbles us. Because it shows us how much we actually what?
Don't know.
Don't know. No questions right now, please. All questions at the end. Hayr, inshallah. Come out of the first tashahhud. Is it obligatory to sit in tashahhud? Do you have to say the first tashahhud?
No.
Right, come out of tashahhud now. What do you do? Raising the hands again. Everybody understand? It's also recommended. And then the hands on the chest like you normally do. Now, let's fast forward to the last tashahhud. Sit down, please. The last tashahhud. What are the recommended acts of the last tashahhud?
To say the tashahhud and then say the dua, Allahumma salli ala.
Right, to send prayers upon the Prophet ﷺ, upon that view. What else? What else is recommended in the last tashahhud?
Say the dua.
What is that?
There's different dua.
Such as, give us something.
Allahumma inni a'udhu bika.
Seeking refuge in Allah from 4 things. Right. Or, what do you say after that? Ask Allah for something of your personal needs. Or how do you sit? How do you sit in the last tashahhud?
You sit like this.
What is that position called?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Anybody know what that position is called? La, you almost got me. Anybody know what this position is called? Anybody know what this position is called? What is the position called when you rest, you're behind on the ground, and you put your left leg, like that, with the right leg? What is that position called? Anybody know what this is called? No one knows what this is called? La ilaha illallah. Iftirash. Closer. Anybody else? Come again. Anybody else? La. Anybody else? This is sad. We don't know the names of the salah. What's the name of this person, that person, this player, this stick, this? We know the names of the salah. Something is wrong with the classes that we're being taught. Something is wrong. Seriously, something is seriously wrong. Everyone should know the name of this. Anybody know the name of it? Nobody. Khair. What else is recommended? I can't give it to you if you don't know. What else? What else do you say?
What do you mean?
It's my job to encourage you to learn more. It's my job. A good teacher is not a teacher that gives everything. You have to be what?
In this book it says you
gotta
can't
push you just but and there's another chapter in this book. The permissibility of concealing knowledge for a greater benefit.
MashaAllah. I didn't read that one.
Okay. 40 hadith on seeking knowledge.
Not the one.
Try it. What else is recommended, Yusuf?
After you finish making
What about your finger? How do you move your finger? What's that? Why is your index finger connected to your thumb?
Why is it connected to my thumb?
Yeah, what is that? Who taught you to do that? That's another recommended act. And there's more than one way of doing that in the tashahhud as well. And this also shows the diversity of the sunnah. All of the things that we're talking about right here, we're only talking about sunnah. This is just hadiths about the Prophet ﷺ. The diversity of the what?
Sunnah.
The sunnah. Very important concept. What else is recommended? Now leave the salat now. What's obligatory? What's the obligatory way of leaving the salat? How many times? Once or twice?
Obligatory once?
Once or twice? Right. What else do you do that's recommended in the taslim? Turning the face. Or saying Khair, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Very good. Okay, Sheikh Habib. Now you have to be the best of the best now. Everybody understand this? Alright. So, before you make the best salat, what is the best thing that you do?
Yeah.
Before all of that. How do you prepare for the salat? In the best way. Tahara. Make a perfect wudu, huh?
No.
What do you do before you make wudu? What do you do before that, Sheikh? Think about it.
No one giving the answer. It's very important.
Before the wudu?
Yes, before the wudu. You use the
miswak.
The toothstick, not a miswak. Toothstick. Toothbrush, miswak, toothpick, a napkin, al-muhim, you clean your teeth before the wudu. Then you do the recommended wudu. And that's another class in itself, which we've done a tutorial on that as well on the channel. Then what do you do now, Sheikh? You're making the best salah now. Raise your hands. The hands, the best way, the palms should face the qibla. The fingertips should not be spread out like this, nor should they be clutched together, but normally and naturally. Allahu Akbar. What do you say? You make the takbir at the same time, before you raise, or after you raise. All three of them are permissible. All three of them are permissible. The hands are raised. Allahu Akbar. Now, what's next? Right hand on the left. And we say is that perhaps, placing the hands on the chest is the strongest view for several reasons. The first reason is that from the hadith that deal with placing the hands, the one on the chest is relatively most authentic. It's relatively most authentic. And we didn't say that the hadith is authentic, but it is asah min ghayrihi. Number two is that, as some of the people of knowledge have said, is that it proves that a person is giving a great deal of emphasis on the salah, as if he's grabbing his heart, as if he's hugging his heart. I'm praying in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and some of them say that it proves more vigor and stamina instead of praying like this. And this is just an intellectual argument. We're not trying to get into one. I know Ali is one of don't kick me. I know he does. I'm reading his mouth. Right, he does. I know. So which is an intellectual argument, is that if you look at it hypothetically, which one, Umar, do you think is more intense? Hypothetically. Like this or like this? Without a doubt. Without a doubt. This is more what? Intense. Intense than this. Not saying that's wrong. Not saying that hadith is authentic, but we're trying to prove a point here. Everybody understand this? There lies no doubt. This is more what? Lax. This is more intense. Salah, prayer, khushu'. Khayr inshallah. Moving on. We're not here to debate any fiqh issues. Alright, tight. The next recommended after the prayer is what? Or rather, nay, la ya shaykh. The ulama, they differ over what's the best supplication to make. They differ over what's the best supplication. Is that hadith authentic? The hadith of Abu Hurairah is in Bukhari and in Muslim. That when the Prophet ﷺ would lead the salah, he would keep silent for a brief pause. And he would say something in that brief pause. As for the hadith, subhanakallah wa bihamdika, then there's long kalam when that hadith is that even authentic. That's firstly. The hadith of Ali in Sahih Muslim. إِنِّي وَجَّهْتُ وَجْهِي لِلَّذِي فَطَرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. That's in Qiyam al-Layl. So the issue is, what is the best supplication to be made in the salah? The best tawajjuh, or the best istiftah. Everybody understand this? The most authentic one is the one about the sins in the east and the west. Moving on. Then what's the next best thing to do? La, something else. Another way. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم من همزه ونفخه ونفثه. A different way of making isti'adha. Then what? Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Then the what? The Fatiha with the proper tajweed, reading it just like the Prophet ﷺ read. The qira'ah that's most popular from the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ did not join the verses together. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. He stopped. He paused. Then what's next? Surah. What surah did the Prophet recite in the salah? You have to, in order to perfect your salah, you have to have more knowledge. This is the third and final level now. We said this is the what? This is the top level now. What is the detailed recitation of the Nabi alayhi salam? Very important. What did he recite in Surah Al-Fajr? You can't just generalize it. It's a specific surahs that recited what? Fajr. Specific surahs he recited what? In Dhuhr, and Asr, and Maghrib, and also in Isha. Yawm al-Jum'ah. What surahs did he recite? That's what most more. Jum'ah and Munafiqun. Everybody understand this? Very important. Now, it's not the basic level anymore, Sharif. This is what? This is the highest level. How did the Nabi al-Kareem lead the salah? Try it. What's next? After you recite the surah, then what do you do? You're done. You recite the surah, now you're going to ruku'. Allahu Akbar. The back should be totally, perfectly straight. Head like that. Everybody understand this? Right. Then when you say in the ruku', elbows should not be loose. The elbows should be what? Tight. Locked. When the elbows are loose, it makes you lean over too much. Everybody understand this? The next recommended act is that the hands should grab and cup the kneecaps. Everybody understand this? and then you make all types of supplications in the ruku'. Everybody understand this? You come out of the ruku', now what do? Allahumma Rabbana lakal hamd. There's different ways of saying that, as Sharif and Yusuf said. And then the Prophet ﷺ, a very abandoned sunnah, is that he would stand for a very long time. So he would stand for such a long time. Anas radiallahu anhu narrated, he says, Hatta yuqal, until it was said, Qad nasiya, that the Prophet forgot he was making salah. Most of us, we come out of ruku', Sami Allahu liman hamidah, 5 seconds, right into sujood. And then I'm on the sunnah and you're not. La. And Nabi alayhi salam, he was standing for some time. And that's a forgotten sunnah. Most of us don't even know about it. The next level is what? Going down to the sujood. We say perhaps the best way, and Allah knows best, is going with the knees first. Because the knee is the natural movement of the body. The lowest part of the body is not the hands, but it is the kneecap. So it only makes sense for you to go in a what? A movement. And that's a long issue in itself. Everybody understand this? And that's how most of the Sahaba prayed. That's how most of the Sahaba prayed. Everybody understand this? Right, inshallah. When you're in sujood, what do? Of the best. What's the best way, best supplication to make? Subhana Rabbil A'la, at least 3 times. Other supplications, ask Allah of the good of this life and of the hereafter in Arabic. In Arabic. The Fard Salah, you should only say that which is Arabic. Everybody understand this? How long should you make the sujood? Should your feet be together? Should your arms be together? Khayd, you come back up. Allahu Akbar. You sit down and you make the what? The jirsa. Everybody understand this? How quick or how fast should you go to the next position? How long? What is the minimum amount of time that you have to sit in one position? We say what? Is that the bones should rest. And a person should sit still. A pause, then go into the what? Next position. Now before we move on with the positions, the general rule is that the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, when he offered the salah, he would not rush. He would take his time. Everybody understand this? And this is the concept of al-khushu', of focus in the salah, not rushing fast in and out, running. Everybody understand this? As it was mentioned by Ibn Qayyim, the faida that Abu Anas gave us is that the slave should find sweetness in the salah. What? Sweetness in the salah. And most of us, unfortunately, when we pray, we make the salah to get done the salah. We make the salah to get done. To go back to work, go back to the game, go back to my wife, my girlfriend, Allah, whatever you're into. Many Muslims, they make the salah to get done. And it's not a thing in which they're looking forward to the salah. Everybody understand this? The munajat, having an intimate conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the Prophet said, don't spit in front of you. Don't spit on your right hand side, because you're having an intimate conversation with Allah. فَإِنَّهُ يُنَاجِي رَبَّهُ. And you can't have an intimate conversation with Allah and you're rushing in and out of the prayer. Everybody understand this? Very important concept. Now, I want you to stand back up, Sheikh. In order to understand some of the things that are recommended in the salah, we must learn some things that are disliked and some things which are unlawful. From the disliked things in the salah is unnecessary movement. Unnecessary movement. Scratching, fixing your clothes, fixing your hutra, checking your phone, itching, moving, twitching. Some brothers, they may rock when they leave the salah. Unnecessary movement. Everybody understand this? Sometimes in the salah, movement is mandatory. Sometimes in the salah, movement is recommended. What's an example of mandatory movement in the salah?
Say if your kids was like, you praying and your kids.
Allah is their protector.
And they running around. Like,
Allah is their protector.
You gotta grab them just.
Why?
So they won't be.
If you broke it, we'll do.
Who's protecting the children? You or Allah?
Tie a camel though.
Huh?
You gotta tie a children.
Nah, I'm not convinced. Mustafa. Obligatory action.
Like say for instance you were praying with the imam and he's finished and you had to complete the salat in order for you to keep your sutra.
La ilaha illallah. The majority of the ulama say sutra is not obligatory. Even though the sutra is obligatory, but just most of the fuqaha say it's recommended. That's not strong. Further that for you.
Say if it's an emergency, like
La, some of the tabi'een, they would pray where fire was going on. They would finish this salah. This is manhaj salaf. Further.
The issue of not being like a statue in case someone leaves the ring
Now, that which is mandatory, we said. Wajib, you must move. Imran.
If your shirt was like...
If your odor became exposed. If your what? If your odor was exposed, according to the view that states that covering the odor is a condition of the salah, you would have to do what? Fix it. But that's still not strong enough. We want something that's agreed upon. Something that's agreed upon. Hold up, let's see. Break the wudu. Your salah's finished. I'm sorry. That's not pertaining to the nature of the salah. If someone walks in front of you in your sutra, that doesn't break your salah. That's not necessarily what? From the nature of the salah. Fadl abnayda.
Let's say if dangerous feature.
No, that's what they said. La. We say a simple, easy example of this is that if you were making a salah, you travel from Baltimore, Maryland to Masjid Toba. You came into the masjid doesn't have a mihrab. Right? There's no mihrab here. There's no minbar here. Which way is the qibla? He doesn't know, so he walks to where it says sukoon, and he says Allahu Akbar. Everybody understand this? Abu Zayd comes in, he talks to him. He says, turn to the right, turn 180 degrees or whatever degrees. It is obligatory for him to do what? Move. And it's haram for him to stay in that direction. In case I can't move. You must now what? You must what? You must move. Everybody understand? Just one example. Moving on. A recommended movement in the salah is like what? Recommended movement in the salah like what? Quickly.
If the imam breaks his wudu,
Fadl.
Somebody gives you salams when you're making salah to raise your hand.
Right? To return the salams in the salah. That pertains to another brother. That's good. We need something else now. Nasser. I didn't forget your name. We need something else. Something pertaining to your salah. Let's say if you were making salah in the winter and you were standing in the shade and you got really cold, you start to shiver. And right, a couple of steps over is sunlight. So you took a few simple, basic steps towards the sunlight in order to sit still and to have khushur. That is an example of a recommended act of what? Of movement in the salah. Everybody understand this? Fine. Then we have the disliked movement in the salah. That which has no reason behind it. Everybody understand this? What type of movement breaks the salah? When does your salah become null and void when you move? We always raise the right hand, shake. Always do yameen. La. Follow. La.
Looking up to the sky.
Fine. Al-Muhim, it's time for the adhan. We're going to stop here. Bidin next panel ta'ala. Hopefully, we'll have another part. Bidin next panel ta'ala. Allah will bring us again another time. We'll have part 2. Bidin if anybody would like to comment, and I mean it sincerely, I'm not trying to be funny. If anybody wants to comment, now is the time to comment. If anybody wants to correct something, now is the time to correct it. If you have any questions on the topic, or off the topic, now is the time. And if not, jazakumullahu khairan. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Sheikh Habib.
So you start from the front first, right?
Inshallah, I come in. Please, any the virtual disciples, please.
Go ahead.
It's juice.
You gonna put this back?
Yeah. How you let somebody take your pen like that?
Huh?
You better get that pen back. You better get that pen back. You better get that pen back, homie. Yeah, they're watching you on TV.
Part of the dust, he's talking the time. Part of the dust, no, it's questions. You gotta make an announcement. That's a part of the dust. You know we have a lot of questions. at-tawarruk and iftirash. As far as at-tawarruk, then it comes from the warik. And this is considered to be a part of the body, close to the hip and the thigh. In other words, when your hip, your thigh, your buttocks is directly on the ground. Everybody understand this? Not in the other positions in which you're sitting and resting upon the actual legs and your heels. But now your bottom is directly what? Your wadik is what? Everybody understand this? That's first and foremost. Tawarraka. Yani is that you use that part of your body. As far as that iftirash, then it means is that you're putting your bottom on the actual firash, on the carpet, or the soft. And it's the same position as we said before. Is that your body, the part of your left thigh, and part of your left buttocks is on the ground and is no longer upon your leg and your heel. That's the meaning of those two terms. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best.
Years ago, Pastor Tom gave me an English translation of a book called Juice for Fayadeen, written by Imam Bukhari. And basically, in it, he said that there are hadith, and they argue over, scholars historically just differed over the authenticity of the hadith, but basically summarized from the book that sometimes the Prophet ﷺ raised his hands in the salat. And like when you said when he came back up from ruku and raised his hands in takbir, and also he raised it in between the two after right before he made the first tashahhud.
The question is regarding the book of Imam al-Bukhari, Juz'u Raf' al-Yadayn. He wrote a book called Juz'. And a Juz' is basically a specific topic that is dealt with by a scholar of hadith. It's not a sunnah, it's not a jami', it's not a musnad, it's not a mustakhraj, but it's called a Juz'. It's a compilation and a collection of hadith on a specific topic. Such as, let's say for example this. This will be called Juz'un fi arba'ina hadithan fi talab al-ilm. It is a compilation of narrations of the Prophet ﷺ pertaining to one specific topic. So Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, he wrote many books other than his Jami', or which is known to the layman as Sahih al-Bukhari. And from the books that he wrote is a book called Juz'u Raf' al-Yadayn, in which he collected the narration of the Prophet ﷺ regarding raising the hands. And Imam al-Bukhari, he wrote this book for two reasons. The first was to establish the sunnah, and the second was to rebuke and to rebuff and refute some false and weak views that he thought were false and weak regarding not raising the hands. Everybody clear on that? As far as did the Prophet ﷺ raise his hands in other positions besides those four, at the first takbir, going to ruku', coming out of ruku', and coming out of the second or the first tashahhud, then there are narrations that state this in the Sunnah of Imam an-Nasa'i and others. Everybody understand this? There are narrations that the Prophet would raise his hands occasionally. But Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhuma was from the Sahaba that he surveyed the Prophet's prayer. And we all know that Ibn Umar was from the strongest of the Sahaba, especially the junior Sahaba, with regards to following to the literal letter. The Prophet says when he used the bathroom, where Ibn Umar would use the bathroom. The Prophet did this, said that's not saying that's correct. But we're trying to prove a point here. Is that Ibn Umar, he had a close eye and a close watch on the salah of the Prophet ﷺ. And he narrated, kana, that the Prophet used to. In other words, in most cases, those were the four places. Occasionally, from time to time, other places, perhaps. We say what? We say perhaps. But that which is clear, that which is known, that which is in the Prophet ﷺ's continual practice is in those four positions. That is the summary of that issue. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
Okay, people are live now asking. As far as the sunnah standing too long after is there anything to say when you're standing that long when you dua? First question. The second question, if you don't know tashahhud, the whole tashahhud, what do you say in that position?
Right. The question says, as far as when the Prophet ﷺ came out of ruku' and he stood for a very long time, is there something specific that you say? There are many narrations that the Prophet ﷺ, he made additional supplications when he came out of ruku'. Everybody understand this? But that does not pertain to that lengthy standing. That's different. That's the normal standing time. And the narrations of the Prophet ﷺ are the additional supplications that he made are not of that length for one to say that he forgot he was standing. So therefore, that which is apparent is that after he made those supplications, he stood and he remained silent. But that was something that he did occasionally. It wasn't something he did every single time. And the way that we know that he didn't do it every single time is the other companions did not what? Narrate it. And if it was something that did it all of the time, then more than one person would have narrated it. And standing in ruku' is a very long position. It's not a hidden position. Saying Bismillah, even raising the hands. Everybody may not see the Prophet raise his hands. But everybody would know that the Prophet stood in ruku' for what? Very long time. It's a very important principle in the salah. That which is a hidden action and that which is a what? Apparent action. Everybody understand this? That's the answer to the first question in brief. The second question is what?
If you don't know
if a person does not make the tashahhud,
he doesn't know what holding.
Right. First and foremost is the obligation to learn the basics of the tashahhud. And until he learns the basics of the tashahhud, he has the option, La ilaha illallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. He can say subhanallah, subhanallah, continually.
If you know part of it, you have to say it.
Let him say the first part in which he knows, and let him make tasbih or tahleed until the Imam salams out. And it is an obligation to learn it, the basics of the tashahhud. He doesn't have to know the whole thing, but the basics. Tahiyatu lillahi salawatu tayyibatu wassalamu alayka ayyuha an-nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh wassalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi as-salihin. That's it. Wallahu a'lam. Fadl.
I was asking the brother earlier about if you offering the salat in Jama'at and you sneeze, is it permissible for you to say alhamdulillah to yourself, just in a low voice?
We say yes, it's permissible to say alhamdulillah. There's nothing wrong with that. As far as you saying it out loud, some of the people now say that it's also permissible, but you should not say yarhamakallah, instead say yarhamahullah, because yarhamakallah will be directly addressing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's the one that sends mercy to Allah. This view was given by Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam. Shaykh Habib.
Now, the sunnahs before Salatul Dhuhr. If I make my intentions to make the sunnahs, but I'm rushing, and I start to make the fard, and I'm in the fard, making the fard for Dhuhr. Can I change my intention while making the fard to make the sunnahs that I normally make?
We say that you should not make a salah and then switch your intention. The salah should not be something that's interchangeable, especially fard to sunnah. Especially fard to sunnah. Inshallah, we're going to get into those issues in detail. Hopefully, if there's a part 2. Abu Sajid is going to inform you if there's going to be a part 2. Inshallah. As far as the general answer, then your intention should not be changed, especially from fard to non-fard. It shouldn't be done, period.
All the questions? What other questions that everybody got? Just text to me. Text to me, huh?
Yeah, I wanted to ask
or you can send to me on WhatsApp.
First the shot. And just wanted to make a clarification. Is there ikhtilaf of it being wajib in the salah?
Type. You have another question, or that's it?
That's it.
Type. The question says, is there ikhtilaf among the ulama with regards to the first tashahhud? We say yes. Alaykum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Is the first tashahhud obligatory? Is it a pillar of the salah? Even if it is obligatory, does a person have to sit for the first tashahhud without actually saying something? Does the Muslim have to send prayers upon the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in that first tashahhud or not? We say there are several issues among the ulama and the fuqaha, from the salaf and from the khalaf, with regards to the first tashahhud. Yes, there is ikhtilaf among that. If you want to know, or if you want a detailed explanation, I would advise you to read the general books of fiqh and hadith by Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah in his book Jalal al-Afham fi salati ala khayr al-anam. Wallahu ta'ala alam. That's in brief. Fadl. Sutra.
The sutra, is it why is it not obligatory? The question is, why is it not obligatory? What's the deal?
We say is that the strongest view in Allah the Exalted in those vests is that the sutra is mandatory. It's wajibah. That's the strongest view. And the delay for that is that the Prophet ﷺ never ever left it off. There is no clear, authentic hadith that states that the Prophet ﷺ intentionally prayed without a sutra. There are other hadiths that say that the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed towards nothing, which are not authentic. And the strongest narration, he says, Salla ila ghayri jidar. He didn't pray towards a wall. And that doesn't mean that he didn't have a spear in front of him, or his helmet, or his breastplate, or anything else. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he was at home, when he traveled, it was a well-known practice, is that he would have a sutra. Rather, when the Prophet ﷺ would use or relieve himself, he would take with him a small spear. A small spear. And the ulama, they say from the wisdoms behind him carrying a small spear, some of them say to flee off some animals that may try to come near him. Some say that he would put up a garment to cover his awrah. And some say is that every time he used the bathroom or the restroom, quote unquote, he would make wudu and he would offer what? 2 rak'ah, and he would use that as his sutra. Let alone the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ clearly commanded the people to take a sutra, and they're admitting. And me, myself, I have probably maybe in my library, without any exaggeration, 6 to 10 books just on the issue of the sutra alone. On the sutra and the hadith about the sutra. So that's the strongest view. And that is the view of many of the people of hadith. As far as those who hold the view that the sutra is not obligatory, and they're most of the fuqaha, from the strongest views that they have is that the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed inside the Kaaba al-Musharrafah, and it says that he prayed between 2 large columns and nothing was in front of him. They say he prayed in the Kaaba between 2 large columns and there wasn't what? The hadith says there was nothing in the Kaaba at that time. So they say that this singular hadith takes precedence over all of those numerous, different, diverse hadiths commanding the people to take the sutra. He never left off the sutra, carrying the spear with him, running to the wall, and the list goes on. That view is not strong, but that's the view of the majority of the fuqaha. Wallahu ta'ala alam. That's in summary. Allah knows best.
I was reading Sheikh Fawzan, and he said that there was nothing wrong with your wife praying next to you, like side by side.
That which I know in this issue is that Anas radiallahu anhu, he prayed with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and there was a young orphan, and behind them was his mother, Sulaym. Also, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, when he prayed with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and he spent the night over his house, Maymuna radiallahu anha was in back of him. Maymuna was in back, and she was not by their side. So therefore, if it was me, if I was in the house praying with my wife, or my daughter, or someone like this, I would tell them to stand in back of me, and not on my right side. That is what I know about this issue. Wallahu a'lam.
If you're praying and let's say me and you are praying together, we're going to the masjid and salah, how should we line up? Should somebody go a little bit behind the one who's leading, or should we stand right next to each other?
Just one or two people, you mean?
2 people, yes.
Right. We say that which is apparent is that the feet should be equal. There shouldn't, the imam shouldn't be in front of the one who's being led. Some of the ulama of the Shafi'i madhab, they say that he can move up just a little bit because he's the imam and the imam should be in front, and you have to watch him and follow his movements. But that which is apparent from the hadith of Ibn Abbas is that he stood next to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. The narration says, I stood next to him. And it doesn't say that I went above him or he went before me, anything like this. So we say that which seems to be most correct, and Allah knows best, is that the imam should stand parallel to the one who's being led. His foot, his heel should be with his heel. That which is apparent. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best.
Okay. Is it allowed to make dua in English and sujood?
Is it allowed to make dua in English and sujood? It should not be done in the Fard Salah. The Fard Salah, you should only say the Arabic language. If you do not know the dua that you want to make dua outside of the Salah. If you wish to make a dua in sujood, perhaps you can do it in the voluntary prayer. My view is that no language should be spoken in the mandatory prayer except for the Arabic language. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best.
Hadith disciple Spain, what is the strongest and most correct opinion about praying alone in a row at the masjid? Is it legislated to pull a person back and make him pray with you? We spoke about this one.
Try it. We say our salams to our brothers and sisters in Spain, and we welcome all the disciples in that country. As far as your question, then the strongest opinion is that a man should not pray behind himself. You should not pray in the row behind yourself, as the companion Wabisa ibn Ma'bad radiyallahu ta'ala anhu narrated in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, and the Jami of Imam At-Tirmidhi and others, that the Prophet ﷺ said, La salata liman salla khalfa as-safi, aw lil-fadh. He says there's no prayer for the one who prays by himself, the one who does not stand in a row with another individual. So therefore, that is the strongest opinion, and Allah knows best. As far as pulling someone back, that should not be done. As Abdullah bin Umar radiyallahu anhu narrated in Sunan Abi Dawood, that the Prophet said, Man wasala saffan wasalahu Allah, wa man qata'a saffan qata'ahu Allah. He says, he who adds to a row, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will keep him upon that which is correct. And he who breaks a row and severs a row, Allah will break and sever him. So the row should not be broken. And there is a narration in which the Prophet ﷺ said to the man, هَلَّا دَخَلْتَ فِي الصَّفِّ أَوْ اشْتَرَرْتَ إِلَيْكَ رَجُلًا. He says, why didn't you find a niche or a niche in a row? Why didn't you pull someone back? Then that is weak. It's extremely weak. That narration is not authentic. So a person should not be pulled back. The most correct way, and Allah knows best, is the following options. Number one, stand or not. Before you even stand, wait for someone to come to the musalla. Before the imam makes ruku', if you're not going to miss the rak'ah, just wait, be patient. Perhaps someone will come. Perhaps Allah will send someone towards you. Number two, if no one comes and you fear that you're going to lose the rak'ah and miss out on the rak'ah, stand next to the imam. Stand next to the right side of the imam. Those are the best two options. There are two more options, which are, we feel, and Allah knows best, the weakest and the worst of the options. The first option is to pull someone out of the rank. And the worst of the worst is to pray by yourselves. That's according to that view. Many of the ulama, if not most of them, hold the opinion that it is permissible to pray by yourself. But the view that we feel is the most correct view is that which we have stated. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. That answer is in brief.
You could go to the imam, pray next to the imam.
Pray next to the imam if there's space. Wallahu a'lam.
Could you explain briefly the different ways to pray I don't think that's the wrong spelling.
Says name, hadith, disciple, where? It's the same one from Spain?
Yeah.
It says,
it's all from the
top. It says, could you explain briefly the different ways to pray the sujood of forgetfulness based on adding or lacking something from your prayer? We say in brief, Imam al-Shawkani, rahimahullah, he gave 8 views on the most excellent way of making sujood al-sahw. Before the taslim, after the taslim, if you do something extra, if you forget something, if you have doubt, etc. We say the simplest, easiest way, bi'idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to look at what you did. If you did something extra, it depends. If you took something away from the salah, it depends. If you have doubt, and then you remember the doubt that you had and you come out of it, then it also depends. To keep things simple and to keep things easy, it is permissible to make the 2 sujood before the taslim or after the taslim. For something extra, something that you omit from the salah, or the doubt that you have and you make an extra rak'ah to stifle that doubt. The strongest and safest view is that it's permissible for them to be made before or after the taslim. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. That is in brief, bikhtisar shadid, jiddan, jiddan, jiddan. There's a long fiqh issue and we have done many classes on that. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
If someone was to come to the masjid and they had to make up door first, right? They were already running behind on door. Do they still have to pray after they pray the door, right? Do they still have to pray the 2 rak'ah before sitting down in the masjid? So when you come to the masjid, you have to pray 2 rak'ah.
Somebody comes to the masjid, he makes Salatul Dhuhr. After Salatul Dhuhr is a class or a lecture, or he wants to sit and eat lunch or talk to a brother, whatever the case, he has a reason to sit down in the masjid. You do not have to make an additional 2 rak'ah. And that is because the Prophet ﷺ said in Sahih Bukhari and in Sahih Muslim, narrated by Abu Qatada radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, إِذَا دَخَلَ أَحْدُكُمُ الْمَسْجِدِ فَلَا يَقْعُدْ حَتَّى يَرْكَعَ رَكْعَتَيْنِ أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. He says, if you enter the masjid and you wish to sit down, do not do so until you offer 2 units of prayer. An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he clearly, explicitly explained is that the Prophet ﷺ did not specify which 2 rak'ah. Obligatory rak'atain, recommended rak'atain, 4 rak'atain, 3 rak'at. He said at least rak'atain. So therefore, if you came in the masjid, you made dhuhr or asr or fajr, you can sit down because you did what was upon you to do. You made 2 rak'ah. And the Prophet did not specify which rak'ah that you have to make. That's the strongest opinion and the most correct view, as was explained by An-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala. Wallahu alam.
When you, like, what is the best time to make the sitting on your butt? Do it in the 4th rak'ah or?
Either the 3rd or the 4th.
Some people be doing it.
Either the 3rd or the 4th. Wallahu alam.
Sister Shahida asked, when will you finish the visuals of the rest of the salah?
Visuals of the rest of the salah. You talking about today or the other lessons?
Today.
As soon as the brothers reorganize another meeting, inshallah. Bidnillah. Hopefully we'll let the sister know. We'll have another meeting whenever it's easy for everybody to organize and coordinate, and we have no problem coming and helping out Bidnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As soon as we know a specific date, we'll inform the sister, inshallah.
These 3 questions right here is the last 3 questions, Ikhwa. Please, brothers and sisters, these 3 questions here. Right there.
Come into the masjid and you have the imam and you have just one person that's praying with him. You said the issue of breaking rank. What do you do in this position? Do you judge the one being led or?
Very simple. We say that the imam is making a salah. On the right hand side of the imam is somebody else. What do you do? Scenario A, pull him back. Scenario B, allow the imam to walk forward. Scenario C, allow the one praying to step back himself. Or scenario D, go on the left side of the imam. We say that which is best is for the imam to make a few movements in front of him, if it's possible, if there's room, if he's not too close to his sutra, if he's praying in the mihrab, or whatever the case may be, that's best. Is the first scenario. Everybody understand this? That's what? The first scenario. Somebody stepping back themselves is not as bad as you pulling him. Because pulling him first and foremost is breaking his khushu'. That's first and foremost. Secondly, you yourself are disturbing the saf. Him stepping back himself is not necessarily what? He's doing it himself. It's a difference. So the first 2 scenarios are best. Wallahu alam. You can make a simple suggestion. Rather, it could even be permissible for you to humbly address the imam. For you to speak to him. You are not to talk in the salah. You cannot respond in the salah, but that doesn't prohibit you from talking to someone in the salah. Everybody understand this? Everybody clear on this? He says, could you please move up humbly? Or even you just said, and if it's a wise imam that has fiqh and have knowledge, he's automatically going to pick up on it. He's automatically going to what? Going to pick up on it. If he doesn't move, then we say that there are 3 more scenarios for the person behind it, next to the imam to move, or standing on the what? Left side, or waliyadhu billah, even pulling him back, which is the view of some of the people of knowledge. But we don't feel that view is based off of something that is authentic. Wallahu a'lam.
Go ahead.
What is the best positions to make dua in the salah when you're making like for a need for yourself or your family? Is it sujood or after the tahiyyat, sitting in jalsa?
We say both. Whilst in sujood and right before you salam out. Both of them. Both of them. Both of them are best. Sujood and also what? Right before. As far as the sujood, then we all know the virtue of the sujood. As the Prophet ﷺ says, فَأَكْثِرُوا فِيهِ مِنَ الدُّعَاءِ فَقَمِنٌ أَنْ يُسْتَجَابَ لَهُ. The question was, what is the best place or the most, what is the best place to make the dua, a personal dua? In the sujood or in the tashahhud before the salam? We say both of them. The sujood, the Prophet tells us, it is more likely for your dua to be accepted in sujood. As far as the tashahhud, then whenever you're finishing the prayer, you have the most focus and concentration. You have what? The most focus and concentration. There's no doubt. The khushu' is at best when what? When you're about to finish the salah. Everybody understand this? A good player, he plays the strongest when? End of the game. Not in the beginning, not in the middle, but when? Finish. This is important. This is very important. That's the strong. This is what the people of knowledge, they mention this. And that's why the Prophet taught us to make those supplications. That's why he told Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to make that supplication. Everybody understand this? And he told his companions. He told Mu'adh ibn Jabal, he says, I love you. So make sure you make this supplication at the end of the salat. It's a special place. At the Ba'd salawat. At the end of the worship is a virtuous time and a time of mental concentration and focus. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. That was it?
Brother, that's it?
Hold on.
Yeah, what is the strongest opinion amongst the ulama on what Allah created first, the throne or the pen?
Right. We say first and foremost that question, what is the strongest view among the ulama? The word strong is relative. You could ask me what I feel is the strongest view or what I've read, but what's strongest, that depends from man to man. What's strong to me could be weak to the next man, or the opposite. And we say, and Allah knows best, perhaps the most correct understanding of this hadith is that the pen was not created first. And when the Prophet ﷺ says, أَوَّلَ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ وَالْقَلَمَ, he says, when Allah first created the pen, and not أَوَّلُ, with a fatha vowel sound, and that ma. أول ما يعني أول خلق الله القلم. When Allah first created the pen, and not أول الذي or أول شيء, the first thing that Allah created is the pen. In other words, Allah created the pen after other things were made and created, and the very first thing that He told the pen was to do what? Uktub. That's the proper understanding of the hadith. And as you can see, among many other examples, the importance of having a strong understanding of the Arabic language and grammar, and it has an effect upon what you believe in and what you don't believe in. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Brothers, obviously there's a lot of questions. We're rushed. The answers are simple, basic, abridged. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase all of us in beneficial knowledge, ameen, and increase all in righteous action, ameen, and allow that which we learn and that which we teach to be an argument for us and not an argument against us. Thank you very much for your time. Jazakumullahu khairan. Hopefully Allah will give you both the benefit and the reward. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The next class is
that's gonna be live stream.
Live stream? Tuesday. After Salat al-Isha from Lulu Marjan in Queens, New York. Inshallah.
No, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. First, I would like to thank Masjid Ibn Taymiyyah. I would like to thank Allah first and foremost.